Right, so I see the panel's already full. There's some panelists that will be joining us in a bit. I'm gonna ask Elon to jump in, just kind of get his thoughts on on reinstating Nick Fuentes, but to obviously introduce the guest of honor. Nick, I think it's the first time we ever speak. I know we wanted to get you on a space earlier. There was a period where you just used every month. It's like you were using a new account to join spaces. But finally, so we didn't bring you on because obviously we didn't want to break X's policies. But now you've got your main account back. Welcome back to X. So it's going to be our first time we speak. I appreciate you coming on.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Hi, yes. Thank you for having me. It's well, it's good to be here on my real account. Like you said, I've had to be on these spaces under 100 different pseudonyms, literally almost 100. I think it was like 40 or 50. So
Oh wow.
it's yeah. I guess I was evading at that time, but yeah, it's good to be here.
I just got to give an idea to the audience about the amount of influence that you have. Now, first, kind of putting a disclaimer, Nick, and you know that already. I disagree with a lot of opinions you hold, and kind of respect you for actually doing the space with me, considering we will disagree on a lot of things. And I asked Suleiman, who you guys know each other well. I asked him, like, look, is Nick okay if I ask a tough question? Suleiman said 100%. So definitely want to give you credit there. But just kind of give an idea to the audience, the amount of clout, love it or hate it, but it was insane. Like any account you use, even if it's brand new, you join a space, the numbers just spike up. And Suleiman's had you on his space a few times. I think Keith, who's with us as well, had you on his space using one of your alt accounts. So kind of gives you an idea. I don't know of many people, maybe not many banned people. There's not many banned people left that have that much influence, but kind of gives the idea of the influence you had. But Nick, the first question I have for you is why doing the space? So you could have started your own space and you got given your opinions. You lead the space. You decide what questions people ask. Yet you came on this space knowing that I'm going to disagree on with a lot of things that you say. And a panel, you didn't even ask who's going to join the panel. And as you can see, a lot of panelists here will strongly disagree with you. So I'm curious, why do this?
More viewers. No. Well, that's partially why. I mean, you have a huge platform and some bigger guests. I've seen some of your spaces. They're absolutely huge and fascinating. I think you have a lot of great conversations here. So, I mean, your space has become like an institution on X with its own prestige. And I think people respect the conversations here. So I've actually been looking forward to do this for a while. I think, like you said, me and Suleiman had talked about getting on one of your spaces before, and it wasn't possible because I was banned. So I've actually been trying to get on this space for a while. I would also say, I like discussion. It's so funny when I got reinstated. Some people were saying, "Oh, well," I think even Elon himself said it. He said, "Now that we reinstate Nick Fuentes, his views will leave the shadows. They'll no longer be simmering in the dark." And, some people say sunlight is the best disinfectant. Now we can see what he's really about. And it's like, I'm trying to be in the sunlight. I want to be in the conversation. I want to be within the Overton window and have a platform and be able to talk to people. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to be sneaky or get away with anything. So I've always wanted to participate in the conversation, and I think it's the best when you have people going back and forth. And I mean, you're right. A monologue would probably be, it certainly would be safer for me and more strategic for me because, and I just want to say this. I don't want to ramble too much, but we're going to disagree. We're going to have this conversation. It's worth noting that I am censored from every major platform other than this one, and I have been for years. Like if you go on TikTok and search my name, it will not even give you results. If you type in Nick Fuentes and hit search, it will say, we will not show results for that term. Same thing with YouTube. If you search my name on YouTube, it will give you a curated list of results. You can't find anything organic. Same with Google. So I'm like the most heavily censored person. And not only does that mean I can't get my views out, but also it means that everyone else gets to say what my views are. Everyone else gets to call me names and they get to say, twist my words, represent me however they want to. And so probably it would be safer for me to go and do my own space and say, hey, I've been censored. People have said so much about me. Now it's time for me to say it in my own words, by myself. I probably will do that at some point this week, but I know this is very controversial, and I actually have to thank Elon and give him a lot of credit for doing it. I recognize the situation he's in and the immense pressure he's under from ADL and from the advertiser boycott and politically. So, of course, I think it speaks to his integrity and that he really cares about the principle of free speech for him to bring me back. I don't know. I kind of feel like I owe it to him to kind of explain myself a little. And, if by the end of the space, people think I'm as truly bad as they say, I'm an odious, horrible person, well, then that's how it is. And if people think I'm persuasive, then they follow me, they like me, they respect me for going in against a bunch of opponents. So, but I think it's going to be a fun space.
Yeah, I think we've got obviously Alex Jones with us on stage, and we did a similar space with Alex when he was reinstated, and I think Elon came. No, I know Elon came on to that space, and it ended up being one of the greatest discussions we've ever had. We've had obviously Vivek Ramaswamy, we've had the Tates who I've invited and they could jump on, and a few other panelists. I'm gonna go a bit back and forth with you, Nick, and then we're gonna open up the panel. As we dig into more polarizing topics. Alex, I've just muted your mic because there was a bit of an echo. Just unmute whenever you want to speak. Nick, you did mention being banned from every platform, and I did look it up. Like, you're banned from YouTube, Twitter, obviously Twitter prior to this, Reddit, TikTok, Spotify, Venmo, Stripe, Clubhouse, Facebook, DLive, Twitch. I'm sure I've missed a few as well. The ones that shocked me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stripe, Spotify.
Yes.
What did, for example, Stripe? What did Stripe say when they banned you?
Well, it's interesting about the censorship architecture. I mean, I'm banned from everything you can think of, even, as you said, surprising ones like Stripe or Spotify, Airbnb. I'm banned from Bank of America. I'm banned from a lot of stuff. And what's sort of disturbing about it is how opaque the process is. I was on a no-fly list for a year. A lot of people even question if that was real. And people said, well, where's the proof? And it's like, when they put you on a no-fly list, when they ban you from Stripe, when they ban you from this, that, or the other, they don't actually tell you you're banned and here's why. They just will tell you. I'm sure anyone who's been censored can relate. Sometimes they don't even give you a reason. So like with Stripe, I got banned from Stripe in like 2018, years and years ago. Before, a lot of people attribute some negative things I've said to me, but that was really at the beginning of my career. I had only been up and running for just over a year before I got banned from Stripe and PayPal. You get banned from Stripe and PayPal, that's like 100% of all the payment portals on the internet. Like, you're done, So when they banned me, it was something I don't remember. Forgive me, it was 6 years ago, but something like reputation for the when it's financial institutions, they usually say that it's about the reputation of the financial institution, or they'll just say you broke our policies. Sometimes they don't even say anything, nothing specific at all. So I'm sure it was something in that category.
There's an argument as well, Nick, that is made that when someone's being censored, it kind of creates that need in people to want to know why someone's being censored. And I'm not sure if you've had that. So, for example, when you're being censored from all these platforms, people are like, hold on, why is Nick being censored? Like, what is he saying? And then that kind of attracts people to want to listen to your content, which kind of shows that censorship could in some ways backfire. Did you witness this, or would you say the opposite happened, that when you were censored, it harmed your reach? Because it seems like you've got more reach now than ever before.
That's a good question. People call that the Streisand effect. They say that when a person gets banned, it helps them because it revives interest in that person. And there definitely is something to that, but it on net is not real. Yes, probably more people would take an interest than otherwise because of these episodes where you get censored and there's media attention or there's a certain level of infamy. But on net, when you are completely cut off from the platforms, you're screwed. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, Discord, I'm banned from all those. Combined, they have billions of users. So I have been relegated for years to these alternative tech platforms like Telegram. Up until recently, I did have a streaming platform. Now I'm on Rumble. And the user base on these platforms is a small fraction of what it is on every other platform. It's nearly impossible to grow. It's nearly impossible to take advantage of any network effect and get new viewers or to be discovered. And like I said at the top of the space, the part that people don't talk about is not only can I not talk on TikTok or talk on YouTube or Facebook, but other people get to speak for me. So I've been trending on Twitter sometimes for weeks at a time over the last 3 years, and I don't have a platform. And so not only do I not get to talk about what's going on, but everyone else gets to talk about me. And so the biggest tweets and the biggest impressions formerly were people talking about me, sometimes twisting my words, taking things out of context, whatever. And so that even injures me further because it lets people like misrepresent me or create a certain reputation. So it has been, don't believe what other people say about the Streisand effect. It is absolutely destructive to most people to be censored. I think it speaks to the strength of my following that I've been able to survive in spite of it, not because of it.
On that point, Nick, and by the way, Sneako just jumped on. We've got Alex Jones, we've got Brian and Ed here as well. So we've got a pretty star-packed panel. We've got more panelists that we're joining. Suleiman, Sarah, just make sure you watch the request because we've got some big names that will be coming in throughout the space. So on that point, Nick, my first question for you, and I think slowly we're going to open it up to the panel. What would you say is the biggest misconception people have about you?
Well, that's a tough one because I think there's so many misconceptions about me. But I mean, I was starting to compose a tweet about this yesterday. I would say the biggest misconception is people always use the language of hate about me. They say he's a racist, he's an anti-Semite, he's a this, an ism, an ist, he's a hater. And I think anyone that has ever met me, and I'm sure people join the panel can attest to this, I'm an extremely polite, considerate person. I don't know of anybody that's met me in a political context and like come away hating me personally. I think I'm a pretty friendly person. It's just like with anybody else. It's like with Alex, who's here, or Andrew Tate, who I see is here. If you don't agree with the orthodox narrative, the orthodoxy, the status quo ideas, if you're presenting a true alternative, then they hit you with all these words. And so I guess to put it simply, the misconception is I just disagree. Whatever people want to say about me, pull quotes, whatever, all I've ever done is talk. I've been banned for speech. And the speech is just things that people find offensive, or it's things they may fundamentally disagree with because it's fundamentally different and heterodox compared to what the mainstream is. So I'm not somebody that wakes up every day to hate on everybody with animosity. I wake up every day as somebody who has been politically persecuted and censored because I'm offering a true alternative. And I guess the last thing I'll say, because I know we want to get on a little, this is an introduction, but I have such a strong youth following. That's what makes me dangerous. There's a lot of people that disagree with the system. There are very few that do it in a way that is persuasive and charismatic, and in a way that's appealing to young people and intelligent young people. So I think that's why people have such an interest in destroying my reputation, censoring me, and financially sanctioning me.
Andrew, I've got a question for you, and good to have you back. One thing I've learned from the Andrew Tate experience is when Andrew was censored and other people spoke on his behalf, kind of similar issue to what you've mentioned, Nick, it created a certain perception around Andrew and Tristan. And I kind of fell for that. And then when I started listening to Andrew speak, and obviously we've had him on the space, but obviously speaking on YouTube and other platforms, I started agreeing on many things that I thought I would never agree towards because things were taken out of context. And I'm not sure whether we'll find that middle ground together, Nick, because obviously some things you say are, in my opinion, significantly more polarizing than Andrew. But the question for you, Andrew, going to your experience when you were censored, how would you compare that to Nick's journey in being censored and being taken out of context?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Firstly, I'll comment on what Nick said about being called hateful. And I think he made a very accurate point that they use the language of hate to attack you and make you sound like a hateful person. But there's no light without dark. The yin and the yang has black and white. And they're going to call you hateful if you actually love anything. If you love anything, you're destined to protect it and stick up for it. And obviously, when you love certain things, there's going to be an equal and opposite to it. In fact, you can argue not even an equal, just an opposite. And they're going to call you hateful for basically loving anything. If you love your country, you're hateful for not loving the other countries. If you love your ethnicity, you're hateful for not loving the other ethnicities. So whenever you see somebody called hateful, what they're really doing is highlighting that that person loves something and he's prepared to defend it. And if you look at the men who have died in any war across history when they were trying to defend their native lands, they were doing that out of love. They were not doing that out of hate. And when you love something, you protect it. And they try and warp that. The Matrix does this with everything. They try and inverse all the good people are the bad guys are the good guys. They inverse everything. So when you see anyone called hateful, be very careful of it, and you know that they truly mean that person loves something. Secondly, in regards to the cancellation, the Streisand effect, I think my position and my scenario is quite unique because at the time I don't think you could go on the application of TikTok without seeing my face. So it was kind of crazy. And I highlighted when they first canceled me that I think they made a mistake because I was too big at the time. I was everywhere and it pushed a lot of people to other platforms. I'll be honest, I'm larger now on Rumble than I ever was on YouTube because I was so heavily shadow banned. And I think if these people had half a brain, they would never have canceled us or canceled people. They would have just continued to suppress them and make them hard to find and allow them to exist on the fringes of the internet. But when they completely canceled me, it was after Nick. I think it was quite a long time after Nick, and people were tired of it. And Nick, along with Alex, along with other people, it kept happening. And the only guarantee of power is that one day you're going to lose it. If you keep using the same bullet over and over again, it loses its effect. And I feel like I may have been a pivotal point. My cancellation just ended cancellation culture. Nobody gives a fuck about getting canceled anymore. Nobody cares. And I think that's extremely important. And now we have Chris from Rumble, who's always been fantastic to me. And we have Elon, who's brought free speech back to X. And a lot of their narratives are collapsing in real time. It's amazing if you think that Twitter being X is only a year ago. Think how many narratives are now being widely accepted by the youth, which were unthinkable and unspeakable only a year ago. It's absolutely insane. And what Nick said about speaking to the youth and having a youthful audience, that's one of the main reasons they will get you canceled. That's what they fear the most. They fear people who have the young generation, which are the most energetic members of a society. They're the people who are going to decide the future. If you own the youth, you own the future. Those are the people who are motivated. Those are the people you have to psyop into working these bullshit jobs or dying in a ditch for some war they shouldn't be in. And as soon as you have a large affinity amongst the youth, they're going to try very hard to shut you down and get rid of you. And I'm just glad it's not happening anymore. I think the entire world is going to change. The culture of the internet has certainly changed. And I like to think the harder the MSM and these people push on and on about the fact that we're becoming a hateful culture, people are going to start to wake up and realize that that's not the case. It's actually a culture of love, and we love certain things, and we believe those things should be protected.
But
Andrew,
do you think? Oh, go ahead, Sully.
Now, Andrew, just a quick question. You mentioned the impact that you have on the youth, and obviously it's the same reasons people fear Nick. Now, the question is, that's a fear that people have both for now and the future, but a larger concern in terms of yourself is the concern that people have, the impact that you're going to have on a wide range of things, whether it comes to politics, culture issues, and so on and so forth. So what are the concerns that are, now that you've been allowed back on Rumble and you're allowed back on Twitter, same with Nick, what are the major concerns that you have? And I'm going to ask the same question to Nick, in terms of going forward, in terms of the attacks that you're going to get, in terms of basically the extreme level of pressure that Elon Musk and others are going to have in terms of keeping you on the platform.
Well, this is another thing they do, right? They psyop. It's one of the largest psyops. When they don't like somebody like Nick or like myself or like Alex Jones or like a lot of people, they're going to come along, or like Myron, Fresh and Fit, etc. They're going to come along and make you solely responsible for absolutely everything any one of your fans ever does. You're going to sit there and talk to hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people perhaps per week, and if one of them does something wrong, it's all your fault, which of course is asinine and insane. If you have a mainstream pop celebrity who decides to lose a bunch of weight and look vaguely anorexic, they don't get accused of making some poor girl become anorexic. No. But if I decide to say you should go to the gym and get strong, and millions of men go to the gym and get strong, and one of those men happens to go to the gym and get strong and take steroids and drugs and lose his mind and go crazy and go and punch someone, they're going to say roided up Andrew Tate fan. And I'm going to be accused of horrible crimes because I'm solely responsible for all of the actions anybody who has ever listened to me has ever done. And that's deliberate because it puts you in a position of impossibility. I've been asked this before by MSM people. They've said, oh, don't you feel responsible because you once said that a man should be strong and he should be in charge of his household, and this young boy in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, told his teacher he's not going to listen to her because he's a man. I'm not in charge of what a Mongolian 10-year-old thinks when he misinterprets my message. This idea that you can say things online, especially nuanced and complicated things, and nobody will ever take any of them slightly out of context ever. They know that's a fantasy land, and it's an unfair battleground to even be playing in. So I'm going to talk. I'm going to say what I know to be true. There's going to be a large proportion of the population who understand what I'm saying must be nuanced and understand what I'm saying comes with a certain degree of life experience. And there's probably going to be some idiot out there who's going to misunderstand everything I say and do something dumb. But you could apply that to everything. You can say, drink water, it's good for you. Some dumbass will fucking drink till he drowns. Is that a murder charge? Well, it's only a murder charge if you're an enemy of the Matrix. So they do this on purpose to try and silence you and try to get you caught up with the difficulty of being so careful with what you say that it has no meaning anymore. If you're going to say anything that is meaningful, there is no light without dark. There's going to be a certain proportion of the people who listen to it are going to misunderstand it. That's the basic reality of the human condition. And to try and apologize for that is what they want you to do. So you soften yourself and end up neutered. They want you to be a eunuch and a mouthpiece for basically nothing if they're going to allow you on their platforms at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the reputational destruction, we have to start to talk about that with that term. That is the number one weapon and instrument in the arsenal of the regime. Because let's be very clear, it's not about what Andrew Tate said or Alex Jones said or what I said and what they make it seem like it's about. It's about the fact that when Andrew Tate goes somewhere, there's a crowd of 1,000 15-year-olds following him and swarming him, and they're ready to go and grind and make money, and they're listening to what he's saying, not even just the funny stuff or about relationships, but they're listening to what he said about the election or what he said about the Ukraine war. It's about power. Same thing with Alex Jones. They say Sandy Hook, Sandy Hook. It's not about that. It's about the fact that Alex Jones has a professional $1 million studio and reaches millions of people completely independently without fact checkers. That's power. It's about the fact that when I go somewhere, when I go on Twitter on a burner account, I could get 50,000 followers in a week without even telling anybody it's me. That's power. And what they don't want is, as Tate said, young people, energetic, mobilized, disagreeing with what the government agenda is. You never see, and this is how power functions. The people that are in power are in the shadows. We don't even really know. Average person doesn't really know who's actually making the decisions. It's a completely opaque, completely incomprehensible system. And that allows them not to be accountable. It allows them, by not being visible, you can't hit what you can't see. It allows them not to be accountable. So when a guy like me goes up there and talks, I've done over 1,000, 2,000 hours of content. Of course, I'm going to say something that sounds wrong. Of course, a joke isn't going to land. Something's going to be misinterpreted. Human beings make mistakes. There is a well-funded, well-oiled machine, ADL, SPLC, Media Matters. They exist. They employ reporters to follow every word, hang on every word of Tate, Alex Jones, Elon, me, any of these people, and look for those things that don't sound good so that they are ready for their report to send it to all the media. And then when New York Times or whatever writes a report about one of us, they have to include the preamble. Nick Fuentes, who said this one time. Alex Jones, who one time said this. Andrew Tate, to poison the well. And this is a form of assassination. 60 years ago, they would go and kill people like Malcolm X or Jack Kennedy. Now they don't have to kill people. All they have to do is get you in a clip saying, this guy's a hater, this guy's a racist. People like you, he hates you. People like you, he doesn't like you. He's a kind of vile villain type of a person. And so as soon as people recognize that that is a mechanism to prevent people from controlling information and to prevent people from trying to fight for market share in our supposedly open society, people start to get inoculated and start to realize. I was about to throw out another tweet the other day. Look around at the country. The country is in serious decline. The country's failing. People get mad at Tate, Alex, me, Elon for pointing that out. Elon Musk is sending rocket ships into space. We haven't been to the moon in 50 years. One guy bootlegged it, You know, he went and found the parts. I read his biography recently. He's putting rockets into space, but the Justice Department is breathing down his neck because he didn't hire enough refugees. Seriously? The country everywhere is litter, filth, the fertility rate's fallen through the floor. We have no solution for that other than mass immigration. The borders are open. I mean, I don't have to spell out everything that's going wrong. We all know the social fabric has been ripped apart. We do not live in a meaningful society, but everybody wants you to fixate and focus on political extremists like me or Alex Jones or Tate. They're the problem. The things that they say are the problem. Not when the TV says Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Not when Israel's blowing up an embassy in Iran trying to draw us into World War III. Not these other things which are actually responsible for wrecking our country, forfeiting the prosperity that we won after the Cold War. So, you know, we have to keep in mind, and that's why I love Alex's brand, it's an info war. It's a battle over control, over the distribution of information and opinions. That's what it's also a matrix. They want to control what you see, what you hear, and then they control you. So that's all this is about. It's people like us independently vying for power to improve society, and them using reputational destruction as an instrument to assassinate us so that we lose credibility or legitimacy, or people don't even want to hear what we have to say before we say it.
Yeah, just as Nick said something really important there. They're trying to normalize dysfunction, and they're shooting the messenger as opposed to fixing the problem. That's their primary objective. And I don't think most people at home understand that every single battle that's ever existed since the dawn of human time has been a battle for influence. We talk about World War III. We're currently in World War III. Lobbying is World War III. Hacking is World War III. We're living World War III right now. And Nick quite rightly pointed out, Alex's brand is on point. It is an information war. Why do you send tanks to said geographical area and destroy the opposing tanks so that you can have influence over the population in that area? So you can control the monetary system, you can control the media, you can control where they go to work, you can force them at gunpoint to do as you say. It's always been a battle for influence. Why does lobbying happen? Influence. Why does the American dollar keep getting used as a weapon to influence foreign nations? Why are we trying to promote democracy so we can constantly and endlessly rig elections all around the world? It's a battle for influence. If you have influence in this world, like Nick does, as he said, he can come back on a burner account and get so many followers so quickly, you are taking part in a war. You are a combatant. And there are people who are unhappy with the influence you have, and they want you gone. Anybody who thinks you can get big enough to have millions of people listen to you and affect how they think by educating them, and that you're not going to be punished for doing exactly that, is ignorant, because every single thing that's taken place around the world, whether it's a plane dropping a bomb, whether it's a currency sanction, whether it's a shipping, whether it's a tax on an import or an export, all of it is a battle for influence. That's all this is in the first place.
But both of you guys are saying that the media's goal is to control your thoughts. I think a lot of people, particularly those on the left, probably think the same about both of you guys. Wouldn't you agree?
No. I would say
I don't
that
mind sitting there for Krasenstein, but I'd like to comment before Krasenstein comes on. So I've been sitting there. I don't mind sitting here, but I want to talk about what's currently happening.
Go ahead, Alex.
Look, it isn't about what Andrew Tate says and does, or what Nick Fuentes says, or even Elon Musk. The power structure has lost control of the people's minds because it's betrayed the people. The social contract is broken. We know that. They want to take stuff out of context and then shut down people's free speech doing that. The bottom line is this. Out of all the big, giant, big tech that's there, only Elon Musk is putting his money where his mouth is and actually allowing a real open debate, because that's what humanity is about. It's exciting. It's dynamic. If the other side has the right answers, they should not be scared. So the power structure has been rejected. No one watches CNN. CNN has like 100,000 viewers on their average show. They are a joke. This show will have 10 million views. That's why they are in complete and total panic mode, trying to destroy anybody that they see as an influencer. And so this is all out in the open. And it's beyond the Streisand effect. People don't believe the system anymore. They don't buy into it. And they understand that they themselves are being screwed over and lied to. And so the entire military-industrial complex censorship system has failed and is being rejected in the most hardcore terms possible. So that's the larger question is, why isn't the power structure recalibrating and trying to back off or trying to change its goals? Because it's so arrogant. It's afraid of Nick
Alex,
Fuentes.
quick question on that though. Are they not trying to recalibrate? Isn't that the argument? But they're recalibrating into making society, one would argue, more totalitarian, more fascist, more of a police state. So there is recalibration happening, but you're thinking it should happen the other way. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I totally agree with you. They are recalibrating by cracking down and doubling down. I mean, look at the bill they passed in the House. It's going to pass the Senate by 80 votes. There's only 100 senators. And I've read the bill. It makes a foreign multinational NGO of Israel in control of Justice Department policy and college policy and literally bans the New Testament. I mean, it does it. The bill.
Alex, that's literally a lie. Like, you didn't read the bill. It's a short bill. I read it twice on a space that I was co-hosting. It's like a page and a half.
Hold on.
Everyone can go. Hold on. Everyone can go look for themselves and see if Alex is full of shit. See if Alex is full of shit, or if Alex is telling the truth. It's a page and a half.
You're scared of this.
It does not make a foreign NGO that's a subsidiary of the Israeli government.
Alex,
AB, can you let Alex?
Moving. Just Alex. I'll let you finish your point, Alex, and I wanted to add to it one question. Just moving away from the bill. Just on the fight that Elon is leading, like we had the president or the former president of Brazil on our space yesterday. His main account was blocked in Brazil. His internet was cut off. And that's someone that had the support of about half the country. He had to use Starlink to eventually join the space using the account of one of his allies. Now you've got X potentially getting banned in Brazil, banned in other countries or under threat in other countries. There doesn't seem to be much support for free speech, other than, honestly, Elon's probably the biggest name leading that charge. Could that be enough? Alex. You're muted, Alex. You got to unmute bottom left corner.
We've got somebody sitting there popping in saying none of this is happening. That's gaslighting. We are seeing massive censorship. The bill says, and it's passed the House, that if you call Israel Nazi Germany or make similar statements, you are going to be taken, basically to jail. You're going to be kicked out of college, and they just keep
objectively false. What you just said is objectively false. Let me tell you what the bill actually says. It's under.
No, I've read the bill. Hold on a minute.
So have I. It's under. Everyone can see whether Alex is telling the truth or whether I am.
Alex,
let me just reply. Let me reply briefly.
Let him make his
point. Alex,
let Alex make his point first.
I do, Suleiman. I don't want to discuss the bill. Not yet, Alex. I'll go back to the bill in a bit, just because we've just got some big voices here. You got yourself, Alex. Got obviously Nick, Andrew, Sneako on stage, and I really want to focus. And I've actually sent an invite to Elon, who hopefully could join us in a bit. But I wanted to focus on seeing censorship in the US doesn't really even compare to what we're seeing in countries like Brazil. So my question to you, Alex, you're probably the first big name that we've seen censored to that level, that Nick, Andrew, and others have faced. Are we at a stage of a point of no return now? Because I just don't see Elon alone being able to lead that fight against censorship. Because if X gets banned, and you're muted by the way, Alex, but if X gets banned in all those countries, then what other alternative do we have?
But this is the thing. Andrew Tate talks, made great points. Nick Fuentes made great points. And Mario made great points. And then as soon as I talk, this guy interrupts me. There's mass censorship. We have an 800-page report came out last Friday from Congress about total manipulation of the election, total censorship, total control. We're being told, no, it's not happening. No, it's not going on. No, it's not even real. And absolutely, only Elon Musk with a major platform, that's why I first off said Elon's doing a great job, was to bring this up. And that's why we have to unify behind free speech and regardless defend it. Because
what happens, but Alex, what happens if X just gets banned in those countries? Well, so we talk about the US, but which is already banning TikTok. But if you go to all other, let's go Brazil, for example, the 4th largest democracy, they block X. What other alternative is there?
Well, the good news is X is so big and Elon is so big, there will be ways to get around this.
Yeah, you've
Gas.
reached.
Should he go out?
Oh, you're back. Now you're back. Yeah, go ahead. There's ways to go around it. Yeah, but how? What are those ways, Alex?
Well, first you got to admit you're being censored, and not let voices come on and saying you're not being censored. The border's not wide open. You know, we didn't lie about WMDs in Iraq. There's nothing going on. They are literally telling you, lay down. Nothing's happening. Nothing's going on. You're not under assault. You're not having your free speech taken. That is all a giant lie. We all know what's going on. It's out in the open. And then they've got this legislation that literally has some foreign group, as Congressman Chip Roy exposed, defining what is anti-Semitism. I'm not even anti-Israel, but I'm anti-people that want to censor speech. And it says right there, clearly that they're going to censor your speech and come after you for what you say.
You're saying thanks for AB for not jumping in. Ed, I'll go to you now. I want to go to Myron afterwards. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, so I want to go back and talk. I believe it was Nick who said the media is trying to control your thoughts, but I mean this is something that he has posted over and over again over the years on X or on Twitter, I guess I should say, and then he ties the Jewish people to it. So I think the media's main goal is to make money. Their businesses, their corporations, their main goal is to make money. Their main goal isn't to control your thoughts. But if you're going to say that the media's goal is to control your thoughts, then I would argue that Nick's goal is to control people's thoughts too. Just like he said when you open this space, Nick said that he's here because you have a large presence and you're going to get a big audience. So Nick, do you want the big audience because you want to change people's minds and control their thoughts, or do you want to do it for other reasons?
Of course, I'm here to change people's minds. But what I'm talking about specifically, when I say the Matrix is the idea, because people have gotten it twisted. When they say take the red pill, it's the idea that the world around you is created. It's that your perception was designed. And we have something like that, something like the Matrix film with media. Most people, I mean, seriously have to question their assumptions about the world. Most people wake up, make their coffee, take their shower, drive to work, go to work, come home, watch Netflix or go grocery shopping, whatever. So everything that they see and hear about the world outside of that immediate experience, they get from TV, increasingly social media. And what information about what's going on in Ukraine or Israel or wherever, where does that even come from? It comes from specific news outlets that then go and on the social media platforms get a special status. Like on YouTube, they will give Washington Post and New York Times and CBS special status, their legacy institutional media. Even Facebook tried to do this. And, people forget this, but the origin of the term fake news didn't come from Trump. It came from Facebook. Because after Trump won in 2016, Facebook said the reason he won, which was not an anomaly, was not supposed to happen, not part of the plan, is because of the proliferation of fake news on Facebook. And they were going to roll out a system where some kind of moderator would evaluate news sources and say which ones were real and which ones were fake. And so that's the kind of information ecosystem I'm talking about, where clearly institutional establishment media companies or sources, they are given preference. And it's about maintaining a kind of monopoly on the flow of information. And the monopoly is about, of course, controlling what the message is. So that's why, I think Elon bought Twitter when censorship was at an all-time high. And it evolved past, initially it was, we have to censor because of violence. I think the first people to get banned on Twitter was like ISIS. Then it was something like harassment. Then it was hate speech. As time went on, it turned into editorial censorship, where it was like, if you are doubting the COVID narrative, that's against the TOS. If you're doubting the war in Russia or Ukraine, you're censored now. If you're doubting the legitimacy of the election, you're censored. And it was revealed recently that some of this stuff was even coming from the White House press office and from various other federal agencies, where they were literally saying, they were emailing their sources at social media companies and saying, hey, this specific post, can you take this down? It's so-called misinformation. So what I'm talking about is clearly an institutional effort to maintain a monopoly on information and opinion making, and they defined the limits of that. And what was considered outside the limits was everything from so-called white separatism, white nationalism, all the way to and including the origins of COVID, the cause of the war in Ukraine.
When you say monopoly, though, what are you referring to? Because there's definitely more than one company.
Okay, an oligopoly. An oligopoly, is that a better technical term? A cartel.
I don't. Yeah, but I don't even think you can consider an oligopoly because
of course
there's
it is.
And there's no.
All right, well, I would like to respond to this.
Go ahead, Alex.
5 years ago, it was in August, I think, of 2018. They admitted that Tim Cook of Apple met over the weekend with the heads of the other 5 companies and decided to ban me off all the platforms the next day. He bragged about it and said we curated Alex Jones. My point is the globalists are losing. They've lost control of the narrative. Elon Musk was a maverick. Figure that out. His bet has totally paid off. And now you've got X doubling in size the last year because of allowing debate here. That's smart. Elon says, I believe in the people being able to get together and have a discussion instead of arbiters saying, we're going to tell you what you can say and what you can do because they don't want a larger debate. That's why we're winning. And that's really
just on that,
the larger issue.
Just on that and talking about censorship, because we've got a number of people on the space who have been censored. So I'm going to go to like Sneako and Myron and talk about this. So Sneako, first to you, right? You were deplatformed. I think you had a huge account on YouTube, a major account on Instagram. And what the panelists are talking about is the idea that everybody wants to impact people. I mean, that's true, but what is the correlation between that and then what the panelists are mentioning in terms of
it's not dirty to want to influence people, like
monopolizing ideas? Sorry, Sneako, what's your thoughts on that in terms of the people trying to
want to
monopolize?
respond to that. I mean, I think that's a fair criticism, but comparing influencers to the monopoly of the media, it seems ridiculous to make that sort of comparison because ultimately they want you to be reliant on them. There's a reason where 2 years ago when I had Nick on my stream, I got banned for misinformation about the vaccine and the election, 2 policies that on YouTube are now reversed. That doesn't exist anymore because at the time they want you to follow that narrative, right? They want you to be subservient to them. There are people that they're censoring, they always end up believing in God. The atheist sort of point of view, that's never going to be censored. The one where you're going to be reliant on the media and the government to tell you right from wrong, that's going to be what's pushed all the time. The people that are here, well, the common thing that we all have is that we're trying to have people that think for themselves. We want people to be independent and self-sufficient, and you're not going to do that if you don't believe in God.
No, that's right. The control corporate media's monopoly is over. They want to silence everybody. So they pick an Alex Jones, an Andrew Tate, and Nick Fuentes and say, oh, just censor them. Then they steal our identity, misrepresent what we said. And once we set the precedent to ban Andrew Tate or Nick Fuentes or Alex Jones, now they can censor all of you. It's about silencing you.
Andrew, the next question, I'm going to go to Myron. I know you've been waiting for a while, but Andrew, where do you draw the line, though? And obviously Elon is trying to figure this out himself. Is where do you draw the line of where free speech becomes hateful speech or start causing harm to others?
All right, first thing, I don't know who this Ed guy is, but the fact he thinks the media exists to make money and not to influence the population shows he's a dumbass. How does the BBC get its money? From the government. It's a state-sponsored propaganda machine. The media is pumped everywhere permanently in every single airport.
The media's goal
Nobody wants to watch that shit. Nobody pays for it ever. It doesn't make any money. It gets all of its money from the Matrix, private sponsors, pharmaceutical companies, and government companies because they're there to try and push a particular narrative. And if you don't understand that, I don't know why you're here. Why do I talk? Do I talk to try and influence people? Absolutely, yes. But I'm talking the truth. And when you have a mainstream media cartel, which is exactly what it is, a cartel which is deliberately trying to misrepresent and lie to the population, why are they lying to absolutely everybody all of the time? Why do they fear the truth so much? Are they trying to convince people to live inside of a version of reality which is simply false, that doesn't exist for their own benefit or for the benefit of the people who make the reality? And if you have any kind of understanding of power dynamics, you'll know the people who are lying, the people who are making the rules to benefit the people who make the rules. If they had any honest or genuine intention, they would simply just stand up and tell the truth. After something like COVID, for you to sit there and say there's no media cartel and that they don't all work in absolute unison to purport the garbage that comes down from above, you live in a different level of delusion, my friend. That's the first
No,
thing.
you're right.
You're completely wrong. You're
Andrew's
completely
right,
wrong.
but
You're completely wrong. Next.
Here's the other thing, important thing too, that I think people need to know. The difference, and Ed, to respond to your comment about like we're trying to get influence, here's the difference between the left and the right. The left is going to censor you and get you canceled and lobby to get you canceled. On the right, we might disagree with you, but we're okay with having opposition and having these open conversations. We don't push for censorship.
Your
The
opinion.
left does.
Exactly.
The left
I'm
does.
open to
And look,
opposition all the
and
time.
that's
So
fine.
I mean,
That's you. That's you. But what I'm trying to
well,
say though
and I
is,
consider myself center left.
and that's awesome. You're one of the few. But the reality is, most of the people on the left, Media Matters, ADL, etc. If you say something that they don't like, especially if it concerns Zionism, let's just go ahead and deal with the elephant in the room. They will go ahead and push to get you canceled. There's a reason why someone like Destiny, who's a friend of mine, can say, I'm an Islamophobe and no one gives a fuck. But if I go ahead and start criticizing Israel, if I start criticizing Zionism, if I start criticizing American foreign policy, they're going to cancel you. Before October 7th, I hosted a debate with Destiny and Nick Fuentes. We had almost 100,000 people watching. This was before it was cool to talk about Zionism. It was before it was cool to talk about the issues going on in Gaza. And we went ahead and dealt with some censorship after that and got demonetized. Obviously, that's not going to be the main reason to demonetize us, but I absolutely know that it played a part in it. Why? Because we had a discussion, a tough discussion on a big platform on a topic that no one wants to talk about. Now it's more appropriate to talk about it because of what's going on and you can't hide it from the world. However, we brought attention to this issue before. And if you look at all the censorship, I mean, dude, is it a coincidence that all the heads of the top tech companies have a certain type of background? I don't know. Let's see here. We got Adam Asari, Instagram. We got Zuckerberg, Facebook. We got Susan Wojcicki over at YouTube. We got, Media Matters and ADL. I mean, if you criticize a certain place, they're going to come after you. And
But
that's
Myron, if you give those same powers to people on the right, are you saying, because there's examples I can give, India being the best example, that would say that if you give those same powers to people on the right, you'll get the same result. The issue is not left versus right. The issue is centralization of power leading to censorship. Do you disagree?
No, I disagree. And even Elon admitted this when he took over X. Conservative accounts were stifled way more than left accounts. That's a fact.
Agree. But I'm saying the reason it's a fact now is because social media companies are controlled by people that identify as being on the left. But if you have people identifying being on the right, controlling those same social media platforms, do you think we won't have the same levels of censorship?
We will not. And look, and Elon's a perfect example of that. We got Elon right now running X, and what did he do? He allows everybody on, whether you're right or left, and I think no one should get banned for having certain viewpoints that go against the agenda. The problem is that on the left, they are okay with censoring you, but when you have people that lean more right or even in the middle, they're okay with allowing people from both perspectives to be able to have a conversation like we're currently having on this space, which I think is a beautiful thing.
Mario, if I can quickly respond to that, I would say that the people that control these companies are saying that they identify as being on the left. Let's be honest, it's not a left versus right issue. It's a Zionism versus people that believe in God issue. It's people that.
But Elon Musk hold on. Elon Musk is a Zionist, a very proud Zionist, and he loves Jews, and he just reinstated the piece of shit that we're hosting today. So what are you talking about? And
okay, come on. Can we have a little
Nick
decorum?
Fuentes, hold on. Nick Fuentes, hold on. Let me just get a sentence out.
Yeah, AB, I was just worried that Nick will be saying things that will cause me to jump in and kind of mute everybody. Then instead you did it on his behalf. So I think Nick was a lot more cordial, even though I disagree with a lot of his stances. He was the cordial one, and you jumped in with the personal attacks. Sully, I think you had a question for Nick, but Nick, I wanted to ask you that same question that I asked Myron. Is do you agree with Myron that this is a left versus right issue? Because obviously Elon, was very clear that censorship exists on both political spectrums, and he deals with it on a global level, not just the US.
Yeah, but the left are the grand champions.
Well, I have a point of view on this as well.
Alex
we'll go to Nick and Andrew on that point. Go ahead, Nick.
Alex certainly right that the left is leading the censorship, but this is belied by the fact that the right engages in censorship, and maybe that's what Tate was about to say. So I don't mean to kind of, steal your bit or whatever, but it has just been reported that there is a journalist at Media Matters who seems to be going and attacking all of Shapiro's enemies. And speaking as somebody who, by the way, I was initially canceled, blackballed, blacklisted, censored by conservatives before. It was actually, not to be indulgent, but I think the story is important. When I was a college kid, I was 18 years old. I was a freshman in college. I met some of the Daily Wire writers like Cassie Dillon, Elliot Hamilton, Aaron Bandler, and I started to ask them very subtle questions about America's support for Israel. Agree, disagree? I was asking questions. And of course, Donald Trump had just won in his inaugural. He said the new credo is America first. So I said, well, why does that seem to be the apparent exception? For that, I was totally blacklisted from that circle. And as a matter of fact, Cassie Dillon, who's a conservative who was working for Daily Wire, started sending hit pieces about me to Media Matters. She would watch my show, take the bad clips, and send it to media. Well, hang on. So the point is, and I know, Alex, you've experienced it too. Andrew, I'm sure you've experienced it as well. It's coming from the right too. I got banned from CPAC in 2018. They wouldn't let me set foot on the premises. And I mean, this goes on and on and on like this. So I think it's really...
Nick, you're right. You're right. The first level of censorship is the conservative fake ecosystem led by the Daily Wire. That's totally true. And then once you get through that, then the main censors come in. I just want to say you're right about that. I mean, the Daily Wire is a joke.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I don't think it's a left-right issue. It's about specific. Well, and what Sneako's saying, I don't necessarily agree. It's like strictly speaking Zionist versus everybody else. But what he's getting at is it's about certain powerful groups over people that do not have power. And it's about narratives that benefit, and as Tate said, certain interests. They rig the game with the narratives that help the people that pay the media. Why does Amazon own Twitch? Why did Bezos buy the Washington Post? All these media outlets don't make money. Streaming platforms don't make money. They're not profitable. That's because, and as Ed said, oh, they're there to make money. And Tate rightly pointed out, I mean, you just fundamentally don't understand what media is if you think it's about making money. Media, mass media, has always been supported by either billionaire patrons or advertisers. Advertising is a function of the discretionary budget of big companies. There is there's little evidence that advertising even makes money for companies. So
totally true. It's always been an expense of propaganda of the power structure. And I said this earlier. I want to ask the question to everybody. The power structure has lost the narrative. They're done. Everybody hates them. They're not in control anymore. Now all they have is brute force. And that's the big issue. The power structure is done. When it comes to propaganda, they've been defeated. So what are they going to pull next?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'll just jump in here quickly. Firstly, I'll say that the majority of the conservative right are just vaccinated losers. And I'll say that right now. None of them have any balls to stand up to anything. They're a bunch of fucking cowards. I made the mistake of going to CPAC once and had to leave after a few minutes because I could feel the dorkness infiltrating my blood. It genuinely upset me. So I don't think it's left or right. I think they're cowards on both sides. And to be truthful about why things like censorship happen, you can look at the basic power dynamic of humanity. And Nick just touched on this. It's about the powerful versus the weak. If the right had absolute power, they would censor certain ideas completely. And they would say it's unsafe for children to see transgenderism, for example. I may agree with that particular viewpoint, but there would be censorship taking place no matter which side's in control, left or right. When you have an absolute power imbalance, the powerful people are always going to subjugate the weak people. This doesn't matter if it's an information war or a real war. It doesn't matter if it's a race war. It doesn't matter what any kind of war has ever been where you have one group who's massively more powerful than others. They're going to subjugate. That's how things work. Obviously, in an ideal world, there'd be a perfect power balance. That's never going to exist. It's going to be constant and changing. I think the culture has changed from liberal wokeism. Now it's swung the other way. It's a pendulum. It's circular. But this is why, going back to the first question you asked a few minutes ago, saying about hate speech and where you draw the line, that's why it's so important that you don't draw that line. That's why it's so important you let people to talk. That's why it's so important you have different points of view. That's how you end up with the truth somewhere in the middle, perhaps, or at least some degree of equilibrium. If you have any...
Well, that's right, because once you let them censor one person, you let them censor everybody, and then you lose your right to speak.
But then, Andrew, what's the solution, though? Is that how do you fix the current, as you call, power imbalances, especially with social media companies dominating speech? You got a small number of companies essentially controlling one's identity. So then how do you fix that?
Well, this is the thing, right? It's swinging from one side to the other. It's currently a pendulum because nobody's looking for balance. It was completely MSM owned in the COVID era. The only reason they got away with that fucking scam for 3 solid years. Anyone who's been following me saw on day 1 of COVID, I moved to Sweden. No one talks about this. I moved to Sweden and lived for 8 months without a mask, without a vaccine, in absolute fully open society. No one talks about Sweden. They didn't close anything. Nightclubs were open, parties were open, concerts were open, casinos were open.
And they had the lowest death rate in Europe.
I was there partying every day, putting it on Twitter, but I had a tiny 20,000 account because I'd already been banned, an add-on account which they had suppressed. So the whole COVID scam only existed because the media took money from the pharmaceutical companies, because they don't exist to make money, to purport their garbage to try and enslave us all.
And Andrew, you just nailed it. they have no more power. They're losing.
They've
They're
lost.
going after all
So
the main
now it's swung.
influencers.
So now it's swung our way. But this is the point. It's a pendulum. No one's looking for equilibrium. But here's what's actually scary. Now it's swung our way. The game is currently changing. In the COVID era, what the MSM and the Matrix would do is they would try and sugarcoat their bullshit to convince you to believe it and sit you down and say, oh, the vaccine's good for you. And they sugarcoat it because they control the narrative. Now they no longer control the narratives. I think we're going to enter an era of brute force. It's not going to be about, we think you should get the vaccine, it's good for you. It's going to be, get the vaccine or you're not going to eat. Get the vaccine or you're going to get
It's going to be false
on
flag. It's going to be false flag terror attacks and civil unrest and civil war.
You're going yeah, the sugarcoating's done. When you don't own the narrative, when you can't tell the happy, polite lies, now it's just brute force. That's how the whole reality of Earth has always been. You can lie to your girlfriend, say, I'm not cheating. If she catches you enough times, you're just going to say, yeah, I'm cheating. Get over it. Now they're going to get to the point where they're going to say, yeah, we're tyrants. We're tyrannical. Take the fucking vaccine, or the QR code on your forehead is going to be scanned when you walk outside by that camera in the corner, and you and your kid's electric car ain't going to work anymore, and your credits will be drained from your bank account. They're done trying to lie to us. They're done with the sugarcoating. They're done being nice. And they're moving into just brute force totalitarianism.
Exactly. So what are we going to do about that?
Now,
what's the response to that?
Real quick, I just want to clarify. I'm not saying that the right doesn't censor. They absolutely do too. But what I'm saying is right now, right here, when we talk about these big tech companies that are responsible for having these trust and safety boards and media matters and ADL, etc., they tend to lean left. Does the right censor as well? Of course. However, I would say the predominant censorship people are on the left-hand side. Some of them don't,
Andrew,
but most of them do.
So Andrew, just one question DG from the audience is asking is like, so how do you fight brute force? So for example, if they use brute force to ban X in a bunch of countries, then what other platform would allow us that voice?
Well, I have to be very careful what I say because I'm in the middle of a judicial process, and my judicial process is down directly to the fact that I spoke against power. That's the reason they're doing this dumb shit to me, and I'm currently on bail. So I have to be very careful what I say because it all ends up in a court file. So I can't talk about mass civil disobedience. I can't talk about mass civil non-compliance. I can't talk about those things. What I would like to say is that I believe we still have, to a degree, the power. I believe that the people still have the power because they can only get away with the bullshit we accept. It won't be that way forever. In 20 short years, AI is going to have you by the balls, and it's going to be completely different. But for now, we're in a transitional period of human history where no matter what bullshit they write down on a piece of paper, the police officers are not robots yet. They're still humans. If we can convince them it's garbage, if we can speak to their humanity, and we as humans can unite behind something common, they cannot completely control us yet.
Andrew,
whether we can regain control before it's too late, before you're talking to a machine mind, which has no problem shooting you in the head, I don't know. But that's where we're entering a period now where you're going to be fighting for the absolute freedom of not just yourself, for your bloodline, for your lineage. We're going to get to a point now, this AI and the things they're trying to implement are going to leave no path and no possibility of resistance in any way.
That's right. So that's right. That's the mic drop moment.
But Andrew, quick question on that, right? Because you're right. The normal methodological process that occurs is you end up getting civil unrest. The issue you have is that right now, and this is the question to you, the society has been conditioned in such a way, both the right and the left, to say do not speak out against power, even if that is protesting, even if that is having any form of civil unrest. So in the past, there was this psychology that civil unrest was a way of combating totalitarianism, fascism. But now, when you look at the populace, they no longer think in that way. So when the people no longer think in that way, they've been conditioned, what are the real chances of there being real civil unrest?
Well, that's the thing, and that's their primary weapon. Their primary weapon against civil unrest is not riot police. Their primary weapon against civil unrest is to have a large contingent of the population disagree with the civil unrest and see the people who are doing civil unrest as their enemy. Perhaps in some scenarios they are, but not in all scenarios. And that's why they fear narratives which are outside of their control, which are not gatekept, because what we're effectively doing is telling the truth and trying to make everybody at home understand that the government doesn't give a fuck about you. They don't care if you live or die. Nobody cares about you at all. You're a cog in a machine. You're an ant to these people. You're a farm on a farm animal. You're a farm animal on a farm. They couldn't give less of a shit if you can feed your family, how happy you are. They just want you to pay taxes and die.
No, I totally agree. Listen, guys,
understand that. It's not about left and right anymore. It's about the powerful versus the weak.
I'm going to leave. I just want to add one point here. That's the mic drop moment. That's exactly what's happening. What Andrew was hitting right there is they're planning to trigger racial division and Palestinian versus Jew and Jew versus that, because they're losing. It's a divide and conquer. They've lost the narrative, so now they want to divide and conquer to get us all fighting with each other with an angrier world, as Klaus Schwab says, before they roll out all this control. And right now is the window for us to wake up to globalism, dehumanization, depopulation, anti-human systems, and embrace what's pro-humanity, embrace men and women, embrace families, embrace nuclear family, embrace Western culture, and that will override this system. So absolutely, the power structure is losing. And so now they're not just going to the civil unrest model, they're going to the divide and conquer model. That's why right now in the battle space, we've got to reach out to everybody and explain to them that it's globalist versus human. It's a pro-human future versus an anti-human future. It's the technocracy versus the human system. That's the fight.
Brian, your thoughts on that brute force argument? Obviously, you've been censored. Sneako, Alex, Nick, Andrew, all of you have been censored. Would you agree with Tate's position there, Andrew, Brian?
Brute force as in what? Brute force as in that there's government agencies or the media out to get you, or what exactly do you mean by?
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of brute force. Firstly, we can talk at governmental level. Of course, if you're a spy, there's assassinations. That kind of thing happens all the time. If you're a whistleblower for Boeing, you end up dead. We can talk about all that kind of stuff, but we can even move it down another level. Let's imagine a fictional character. He's 6'4". He's extremely handsome. His name's Top G, and he spoke against the governments. He spoke against the governmental systems, and they blocked all of his bank accounts, deleted him from every single app that exists, froze all of his money in every single country they could find it, blocked the bank accounts of all of the mothers of his children, arrested the mothers of his children, dragged them into offices, called 4,000 women he'd ever known in the past and tried to get them to sign pieces of paper saying he's a bad person when he isn't, then tried to raise criminal charges against him for money laundering and garbage and tax not paid and far off trust funds on a Caribbean island, forcing him to spend $10 or $11 million on legal fees just to stay free, then saying he's a human trafficker because some of his friends had TikTok and throwing him in a Romanian dungeon for 92 fucking days, letting him out of there, leaving him on house arrest for 8 months, then leaving him stuck within the jurisdiction of that country where he's basically neutered and censored because if he tells too much truth about what's going on, he gets dragged back to the dungeon he just got out of. If that's not brute fucking force, my friend, you don't understand the world. And if you had if you have any influence over this world and you're telling the truth to a point where you have millions of people waking up to it, they will use brute force to shut you up. And brute force is usually a prison cell or a fucking bullet.
If everything you said is a actual truth and not a subjective truth, then yeah, I agree that that's brute force. But I just wanted to touch on something. And you called Ed here an idiot because he said that the media's main goal is to make money. Do you know what these brothers look like? I would suggest it's their only goal. Comcast, Warner Brothers, Disney, they're publicly.
Okay, well, sorry. If you're saying it's their only goal,
let me finish my point here.
If you're saying it's, I don't want to interrupt you, but if you're saying it's their only goal, I just
let me finish my point here.
Sure.
Can I finish my point? Thanks. So. Sure. Comcast, Warner Brothers, Disney, these are publicly owned companies. Publicly
Ian, you have a hot mic. Ian Carroll, you have a hot mic.
But they're also hilarious.
You're just gonna, yeah. If someone can see Ian on stage, it's glitching for me.
Yeah, I
just
see him.
Yeah, it's glitched. I've just muted everyone. It worked. Yeah, Brian, go ahead. I've just fixed it.
Yeah, so Disney, Warner Brothers, Comcast, all publicly owned companies. They own a huge percentage of the mainstream media, at least in the United States. And the goal of a publicly traded company is to optimize profits. I mean, you can dive into your matrix conspiracy theory, but those are subjective truths and not actual truths. A publicly owned company, their goal is to optimize profits.
Cool. Fantastic point. They're a publicly owned company and their goal is to maximize profits, so they get paid far too much money for basically no reason, because the advertising doesn't work, by people who have vested interest in purporting false versions of reality to the people at home, because it is the matrix. They don't make money from selling anything to the consumers. In fact, the consumers get to consume it all for free, which is what they want, so they can lie to you. They make their money by taking money from advertisers, and these huge billionaires get to control all the narratives, which is exactly what we're talking about. I want to quickly clarify, because you said that I called Ed an idiot. I want to clarify that. Because you said that their primary goal is to make money and not manipulate the population, not only Ed is an idiot, you are an idiot. I assume it works. It runs in the family. You're both fucking idiots. You don't have a clue how the world works.
Least I'm not,
you're both dumb.
At least I'm not going through a criminal trial, right, Andrew?
Primarily to make money, as opposed to actually convince the population to walk lockstep into their own destruction. You don't understand how the world works.
Whatever they have to do to turn a profit, based on the board of directors voting for what they think is the best choice to turn that profit. So you can, I mean, you can dive off into these matrix conspiracy theories. You can call us idiots. I mean, we're not the ones who are actually going through a criminal trial here for, what is it again?
Human trafficking.
There you go.
Well, I guess if you think that makes you smart, that you're not going through a criminal trial, that's fine. The point is you don't understand why the media exists. And that's why you're an idiot, sir. And I'm not saying that to try and ruin the tone of the spaces. I'm not sitting here to try and insult you. If you don't understand why the media exists, you're not
It
qualified
exists
to
to
comment
turn a
on anything.
profit.
It's like not
A
understanding why
corporation's
gravity or how
purpose is
gravity
to
works.
turn
You
a
don't have a
profit for
base
shareholders.
understanding
But
of
Period.
gravity.
I think Brian, Brian, the line between profit and other incentives to push a certain narrative is getting blurred as time passes. I think you're both right in
So
some way.
Mario, I would argue that certain individuals within the media definitely have a goal to, you know, maybe control other people's thoughts or push a narrative out there. But the corporate structure itself is, their goal is not, like Brian said, to push a narrative. Their goal is to turn a profit. Does that mean if you know, push a certain narrative, you're going to generate more profit because you know what your audience is or who your audience is or
Would
who your
you
advertisers
would
are?
you
Yes, that is possible. What's that?
So you just admitted I was right.
No,
If you
no.
push a certain narrative, you make more money because you do what the billionaires want you to
Their
do. You
ultimate
just
goal
admitted.
is to turn a profit. They whatever that involves, as long as their shareholders believe that that is ethical and believe that that is in the best interest of the company, that's what they will
So do you
do.
think? But do you think the media putting out a hit piece on Andrew, is a way to make profit, or would they make more money putting out a piece kind of contradicting other media hit pieces?
Well, I mean, the hit piece argument is subjective, right? The people who are putting out that article are probably viewing it as
the
an
censorship.
article covering the news.
What would you say about COVID censorship? Would you say it's because of advertisers? How about the Hunter Biden laptop? Would that be to make money? And we agree on many things, Ed, but this particular point there.
Let me ask you a question. Like in terms of Andrew Tate, that's a good example. So when you saw when he got arrested, there was article after article after article, right? Hit piece after hit piece. I wrote an article that got for a newspaper, mainstream media newspaper. It got millions of views. So and they got more views in a day than they do in like weeks, right? Because it was about him, and yet they removed it. So if it was solely based on incentives, views, readership, and then obviously from that becomes there's financial incentives, then they would have allowed that. So doesn't that give you an indication, Ed, like to hear your view, in terms of how there is a control of the narrative? Now, you may disagree with what the control of what the narrative is, but does that not indicate?
So you have different media outlets that have different audiences, right? Their narratives are, they are going to, like if you watch CNN, you're going to get a different narrative than if you watch Fox News, right? You know, Fox News is going to cover all the pro-Trump stuff, all the anti-Biden stuff. CNN's going to cover all the anti-Trump stuff, all the pro-Biden stuff. MSNBC even farther in that direction, right? But that's because they know their audience and they want to generate as much profit as they can. And they know that if they put out a story that goes against their audience, that's going to hurt them financially. That's going to hurt them in terms of getting advertisers.
This isn't true. This idea that, Ed, if I could just jump in here.
But it is, Nick, it is.
Okay, you can say it is, but I'm going to rebut what you just said, which is that this idea that everything is working. I mean, what you're saying is basically like a plausible, rational explanation that we hear in like second grade civics class, you know. So we go out and vote, and this is how a bill becomes a law, and the media, journalists write stories, and the media, you know, makes money as a corporation. But we all know in reality, in concrete specific examples, that is actually not how it works. You know, I'll give you a perfect example, which is relevant to Twitter. What happened immediately when Elon Musk purchased Twitter? Major advertiser boycott. And that was something that I actually had predicted. I told this to President Trump when I met with him, actually. I said, because we talked about True Social and Twitter, and I said the next move is that ADL, there are some choke points with the acquisition of Twitter, such as the App Store. The Apple App Store, of course, 50% of the smartphones in America are Apple, and all the software on the phones has to be from their proprietary App Store. I said, that's a choke point. App Store can say, we're not going to let you buy it. I said, the other choke point is the advertisers. All the revenue for companies like Twitter or like Facebook comes from advertising. So ADL may organize a boycott. And I told them about how this precise thing happened in 2020. Mark Zuckerberg refused to take down a post from Donald Trump during the George Floyd riots. Trump said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And Zuckerberg said, you know, I think I'm actually going to let that remain on the platform. A lot of people disagreed with this. ADL was one of them. ADL took out a front page advertisement in the LA Times calling for an advertiser boycott. Within months, the post was taken down. They banned thousands of QAnon accounts. They banned Holocaust denial on the platform. So clearly, and you can say in like a rational way, this is like a plausible, ostensible explanation. Well, you know, they did that because they're worried about their shareholders. No, this is a regulated press, and it's similar to a protection. Hang on. Let me just finish my point. Okay. I'm almost done. I'm not, you know, I don't want to interrupt people, but you know, so this is like a protection racket, and this is how it operates. They come along, you know, certain groups or advocacy groups come along and say, hey, it'd be a real shame if something happened to Facebook. You got to take down this post. Oh, I don't think we're going to. Okay, well, then we're going to take out a front page ad on the LA Times and force you to capitulate. They did a very similar thing to Elon Musk with Twitter. And the point is I think you're right on some level that in the corporate boardroom at the New York Times, maybe they're not saying, you know, how can we control people's minds today? But we also know that the major press companies have relationships with social media. They have relationships with the intelligence agencies, with the government. A lot of the opinion writers and journalists at these companies are, I think a lot of them are spies. I think some of them are double agents. And we also know that on social media and in the press, there are these guardrails that cannot be crossed. And they cannot be crossed because there are groups that they will militantly enforce them. One of them is the ADL.
That's
so it's not, but it's not grassroots. It's not coming from the bottom up. It's coming from the top down.
Yeah, but it's not the media. It's these groups. Like the ADL isn't the media. You realize that, right? The ADL is not part of the media. The ADL influenced the media here, but they influence the media but that makes the point. The media because the media doesn't want to lose those financial benefits. And they realized that if they didn't do what the ADL asked, they're going to lose advertisers. It's going to affect their stock price. It's going to affect their revenues, which in turn affects their stock price. And that's their goal, to monetize the best they can. So
Ed, let me ask one question, Ed. If Pfizer was giving the mainstream media, you can call a newspaper, a TV channel, whatever, let's say Pfizer was giving them hundreds of millions of dollars, would they then run a piece which was anti-vaccine made by Pfizer, or do you think that would be bad business?
No, but that goes to my point. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's all about the money. It's not about trying to control your thoughts.
You're saying the people with all the money get to control
they have a goal to make the money.
Okay, so the people with all the money get to control the truth.
Yes, that to a certain degree, absolutely.
Okay, so we got there. Thank you very much.
Who has the money, though?
Christ.
Well, that's the issue, though, and that's
who
why
has the money?
What do you mean, who has the money?
Okay. Well, I was going to say that is
Go ahead, Nick.
That is the fundamental distinction. It's not left and right. It is about powerful. And that is why social media presents such a problem. And I was going to go into earlier, I forget when, but you know, when social media first came around, the State Department and the Pentagon were very aware of how it would affect society. They utilized it during the color revolutions, the Arab Spring. They recognized that when people can come together like that, it's a very powerful political force, because a lot of people might think, they look at tech censorship and they say, hey, let these guys talk. You know what? We can't have conversations. You know, we got to let people disagree with each other. But the U.S. security apparatus recognizes how powerful it is, because it's also a medium where people can come together and organize and demonstrate, and they can share narratives. And as we found out recently, there's these accusations that narratives are coming from foreign powers, or they're coming from. So people recognize that speech and the interaction between large numbers of people is a very powerful force. That makes social media an incredibly hot and powerful medium. Initially, they thought that social media was going to lead to liberalization, democratization, as it did in the Arab Spring, as it did in the former Soviet states. What they got instead was Gamergate, 4chan, Donald Trump. They got all this other stuff when social media was the most hot and the most free. And I'm one of the only people that says this. people don't realize that there was a unique singularity in technological development in like 2012. You know, we think in terms of the internet and email and computers, like these things have been around for 30 years. But it wasn't until 2012 to 2015 when everyone had a smartphone and everyone was on social media. So we had internet before, but it was largely the domain of hobbyists, professionals. It didn't have certain other applications. After 2012, every 14-year-old had a smartphone or a laptop. They were on Facebook. And with all that interconnectivity, this is a very destabilizing technology. That's why, you know, as Marshall McLuhan would say, it's a hot medium. What they got was the Trump election. And there was a very clear turning point. The day after Trump was elected, I think they convened a meeting at Google or one of the big tech companies, and they said, we can never allow this to happen again. We let the people speak to each other, talk to each other. We allowed citizen journalism, and look at what we got. We got the biggest upset in political history. Donald Trump, from Celebrity Apprentice, is the president. They said this is an unmitigated catastrophe. And that's where you got Zuckerberg trying to enforce the fake news thing. That's where you got the waves, tranches of bannings, censorship, and the gradual escalation of censorship until 2021. 2021 was the second turning point. And I was one of the only people that pointed this out. When they banned Donald Trump after January 6th, I said they just killed censorship, because banning Donald Trump, he's too big to fail. You can ban Jared Taylor, you can ban Nick Fuentes, you can ban Gavin McInnes. People will protest, but there's 300 million active users on Twitter at that time. You're not going to start a revolution. Banning Trump brought in the vulture capital or venture capital. They brought in certain state-based solutions like the tech law in Florida and in Texas, which are going to be decided at the Supreme Court in this current session. And now it's and I think probably this is what catalyzed Elon to purchase Twitter, because that conversation only started just a year later. So we are now in an extremely precarious transitional time, as Tate said, where there is a beachhead that has been established for free speech. It's on Rumble, it's on Twitter, it was on TikTok, because it seemed that TikTok was not as responsive to pressure from certain advocacy groups as other big tech. I think that's why they're being banned now. And we could get into that because it's kind of a big topic in itself. But I think that TikTok, by the way, allowed for the rise of Tate. Tate could have never risen on YouTube or Instagram. They would have clocked him, banned him immediately, because at that point they had a very sophisticated community guideline censorship sort of service. It wasn't until TikTok that a guy like Tate would be able to blow up in the era of censorship. So TikTok, X, Rumble are our free speech beachhead. Consequently, when people are able to talk to each other, they become a lot more right-wing. And I think that's why you're starting to see, and I'm not the only one to notice this, people are moving to the right culturally. It seems that cancel culture's over. It seems that, a lot of narratives are changing about crime or about immigration or about even the war in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza right now. So this is really a war about social media, and social media is so powerful that it can be more powerful than the money. The money used to control mass media because you had to pay huge advertising money to television and radio to keep that stuff afloat. Now anyone with a smartphone can join up and access social media and blow up and make a viral video and then have influence, and that comes with it political power. It's dangerous, but that is how we can fight an asymmetrical political war against entrenched, institutional, rich, powerful forces. And there may be an argument that there should be guardrails to this. At the same time, if we live in an open society, if we're to derive the benefits of this so-called laboratory of democracy that we have, you have to let people talk. Because what seems to be coming the other way is they say, on the one hand, we live in a democracy and an open, free society, and we have a free press, and everyone has the right to vote. And so everyone's entrusted with that responsibility. Everyone can vote, and everyone, we're all created equal, and it's a participatory system. But then when people get on Twitter and they like the wrong people or they have the wrong opinions, then they say, oh, you're not smart enough to parse. You're not smart enough to discern information. We have to ban certain people. We have to ban misinformation because people they're believing the wrong things, having the wrong information. And it's like, okay, so either we live in an open society or we don't. We either live in a society where people are participating and they have rights. And I think what Tate is saying is true. Power rests on two things: legitimacy and force. That's where authority comes from. Most of the population recognizes that the government has the right to rule. Most people recognize the government has sovereignty. So when the cops arrest people, people say that's a legitimate exercise of authority. That's legitimacy. When people don't believe the government has legitimacy, when they don't believe in their legitimate authority, that's when it becomes necessary for government to use force. If people start to say, hey, this election was rigged and Biden's illegitimate and all these institutions are lying and they're in on it, then they start to say, the cops, the military, the government, they don't have legitimate authority. We're going to resist them. That's when they got to send in the military.
And so the question is then, when does it become necessary for the people to use force?
Well, I think that's a dangerous, I wouldn't say that in a public forum because, if you start to say, hey, we're going to overthrow the government, then they come and kill you or throw you in jail. But, I just want to finish my point. So to finish my point, the only way for America to correct course right now is for there to be reforms. The people don't like what's going on. For the government to maintain its legitimacy, it cannot clamp down on social media and use brute force and say all of a sudden, oh, well, you've had too much to think. This is actually a technocracy. We're engineering public opinion through algorithms and media. Like that is too much for the population to bear. Either we'll live in tyranny and misery, or there will be a violent confrontation, and that is going to be ruinous for America. So the only good course correction is for the regime to reform itself. The people don't like what's going on. It needs to reform to maintain legitimacy. And the way to do that
Nick,
is
let me ask you a question
media.
on that. So Nick, no, but just a question on that actually. Can you do it with social media? So, and the question is this, because social media has an impact, it has certain level of engagement, but there's a reason, like you're back on social media. We've got many of the panelists on here who are on social media, but would never be allowed on mainstream media. And the mainstream media at the moment, whatever the medium is, whether it's TV, whether it's newspapers, whatever the medium is, still controls the narrative, right? And so when you look at it, there is still a disproportionate effect. So, I mean, A, does social media become big enough so you kind of have that balance? Or B, is it a scenario where people on social media will never have that overarching holistic impact? Or C, is it that now your people like everyone on this panel and yourself are back on social media? This is the first step to basically making certain ideas mainstream.
I think it's a powerful tool. The question of whether it's sufficient, we will see. I think a good test right now is this American support for Israel during this conflict, because all of the resistance you're seeing is coming on the more free and more fair social media platforms. I think that's why they're banning TikTok. Every other social platform, the pro-Israel hashtags are far bigger than the pro-Palestine ones, except TikTok. And that's because TikTok, this is the same reason TikTok is beating Instagram. It's because TikTok has the user and the consumer in mind. They say that the videos that are going to go viral are the ones people like. It's the best at giving you what you want. And what people want, therefore, what people agree with is this kind of, it's this content that goes on the other side of America's support for the war over there, the campaign, whatever you want to call it, the campaign genocide over there. And this has led to now major dissatisfaction. Now the majority of Americans in the polling support a ceasefire. There's this massive grassroots protest happening on college campuses. Biden has suspended military aid to Israel. I think that, that's not the only factor, but this has been a big factor in raising awareness of what's going on. It's a big factor in having some restraint from the administration. And this is something that didn't exist at the same level in 2014. In 2014, the IDF and the Hasbara brigades, they were on Twitter arguing that it's the most moral army and all that kind of stuff. And that's why there wasn't as much of a big stink back then as there is now. I think that this free speech beachhead is causing a big sort of problem for them. And this is where it disrupts the national security interests of foreign governments or certain players inside the United States. That's why they want to shut it down. That is how you see the contours of censorship. People have been trying to define what is political correctness. How do we make a sense out of the censorship? The contours of PC and censorship are coming from the national security or financial interests of the people that are influencing American government and American society. So anyway, to answer your question, social media is an extremely powerful tool. I think this is a litmus test. And it is very important that we maintain the beachhead. It's very important that X remains online, that TikTok remains, that Rumble remains, because what we're witnessing is that it requires so much censorship to protect the legitimacy of the regime. If it wasn't for constant escalating AI enhanced censorship, people would have flipped out years ago. That is what was required to keep the lid on COVID, keep the lid on George Floyd, keep the lid on the election being stolen, keep the lid on the Ukraine war. They had to censor everybody. If they weren't, people would have been outraged. There would have been political pressure the other way. It would have been a different story. So I think that, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so I agree with you, Nick, that like it's idiotic to claim that people are too stupid to basically discern what misinformation is. I think that's a really idiotic way of looking at it. It's telling everybody they're too dumb, right? I think that it's definitely the wrong approach, but the issue is more like, where should the line be drawn? Because it can be illegal to push misinformation, and there's been cases of this, right? So where that line is and how you can determine what is and is not illegal, I think that's important. I think that's the trouble that Elon might find himself kind of having as we move forward, whereas other platforms just don't worry about it, right?
But
on that a little bit.
Yeah, Ian, let me ask Destiny a quick question. Ian, I know you've had issues with the mic earlier, so I'm going to go to you. But Destiny, I was going back and forth with Nick and Andrew on this. Is that, where do you draw the line? Who decides where that line is, Destiny? Good to have you. And I'm sure there's a lot of voices on stage that some you agree with, some you strongly disagree with. But where would you say that line should be drawn?
But wait, I'm on Destiny's blacklist. He cannot speak to me because I'm on his blacklist.
Are we talking about for are we talking about for like legal purposes? Or are we talking about for platform community guideline purposes? Or what do you mean?
Let's keep it more broad. Free speech purposes.
Well, I mean,
where do you draw? Is it so Elon has drawn? Okay, so Destiny is Nick on your black? Do you have a blacklist?
Destiny, have you brought? Yeah,
he has to go.
Give us an exception here, Destiny. If you could speak to Nick, if we can have the exception, Destiny, we'd be very grateful. But on a serious note, Destiny, where do you draw the line? Because Elon was asked that question. I think he was asked. We were doing a space on Brazil. When he was asked that question, he said a country's law, even though he might disagree with it, that's that's the line he cannot cross because he's running a business. Where do you think that line should be drawn, Destiny? Because we've been having sorry. I just want to add one more. Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead, Destiny.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, like, to say the line is drawn at the law, I mean, is the most boring answer ever. Obviously, and if you're a business owner, you kind of have to operate there. But that's not the only place you can operate, right? Business owners can also make suggestions to Congress. They can have their appearances. They can talk to whoever they want to talk to. They can push culturally for the norms to change. In terms of like where it should be, I mean, I like the United States freedom of speech. I think that sometimes people speak about it in kind of an ignorant way. Like, for instance, when we talk about TikTok, it's kind of funny that people think it's unfathomable that a foreign adversary literally having connections to so many different American cell phones and having their thumb on social media, which we all know is incredibly like influential and important. The idea that that wouldn't be a thing we'd want to avoid as the United States, I think it's an easy to understand idea without needing to invoke, any kind of weird conspiratorial nonsense.
Yeah, Israel.
Cool. But yeah, no, I mean, I like the United States. I don't think we should have hate speech laws. I think you should be allowed to say more or less what you want to say in terms of like legal protections. And then obviously platforms can regulate speech as they want, but I think they should lean a little bit more on the freedom of speech side and just give people the opportunity or the tools to like block or mute people if they don't want to hear them.
So my next question, Destiny, is, do you think Nick should be censored?
What, from X or from Twitter?
Social media.
No, I think Nick's pretty harmless. I think if he wants to do his little thing, he can do what he wants.
Okay.
I just got something real quick I want to say with TikTok, because I find it very interesting. Real quick, I just want to say this with TikTok. There was a push to ban TikTok for years on a national security premise because, obviously a foreign adversary has created the app. But I find it very interesting that a bill didn't get passed to get TikTok banned until what? Oh, it was overwhelmingly pro-Palestine, about 70 to 30%. Versus being pro-Israel. But once it became pro-Palestine and people became extremely critical of Israel, guess what? Oh, we got to pass the bill and get rid of TikTok.
Ed, I know you were jumping in.
So we were talking about Nick's ban. I know you were banned, I think it was 2021 or something, and then Elon actually let you back on, or X let you back on after Elon took over. And then I think it was the same day you were banned again. And is there, like, do we know what you were actually banned for? Because I know, doing research, I know you had a post where you said who controls the mind, and it was all these Jewish people in the media. And then you also were in a space where you said, yes, we love Hitler, bitch. Like, do we know which of those got you banned?
Well, when I got unbanned, I was under the impression that the new principle was free speech. So I didn't say anything illegal, and they didn't tell me what I was banned for. But I only posted like 3 things. I posted the red media. I said I did my Twitter space. And that's funny, you think, you said you love Hitler. I love everyone. I love you. I love Destiny. I love everybody.
But it's very different saying, but it's very yeah. It's 2 seconds. It's like guys, 2 seconds. So this is the slippery slope. Hold on. Yeah, I've just
against like saying that publicly, like championing that.
Can I jump in now? My thing was glitching.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
I want to answer this. Yeah. So you're right. We cannot compare loving Hitler to loving Destiny. Destiny is far worse.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. Man, look, let's try to last more than 24 hours today.
Come on, that's a good riff. No, you're right. But here's the thing. I think that in those cases, in those edge cases, yes, like we do have to permit people to say things that even everybody disagrees with. We have to permit people to say things that anybody would say, oh, of course you shouldn't be able to say that. That's where it matters. The limits of free speech, that's where it becomes tested. We don't have free speech so that people can say, I like Burger King instead of Wendy's. No, we have free speech so that people can say things that are outrageous and question fundamental assumptions, like about Hitler, like about certain political myths, or how our political system is founded. And so when Destiny says, oh, you don't own what you say, it's not about that. It's just about if you are able to discern the tone when someone is talking or what the meaning is. You look at a lot of the things I say, a statement like that is obviously said in a tongue-in-cheek. It's punchy, it's outrageous, it's intended to be. That's the obvious purpose. And all of a sudden when somebody who is like, and by the way, I should point out, while we're playing this game about, you said this, you said that, when I say something like what I don't want to get banned, but when I say something like what I said a year ago that got me rebanned after I was reinstated, everybody looks at that and not rightly, they rightly say it's outrageous, but there's a complete context denial. People hear that statement and they go, he said what? Ban. Because I'm a right-wing guy and I have all these views and I'm like a canceled American. He's got to go. Hang on. I'm making an important point. When Destiny says, I think that the Palestinians should be genocided, ha ha ha. Nobody looks at that and says, oh, he should be canceled. What an outrageous thing to say. Some people do, but he's on YouTube. He hangs out with Shapiro, Jordan Peterson. When I say something because I'm right-wing and it's outrageous, there's no charity. People pretend like they don't know what humor is. People pretend they don't know what rhetoric is. That's just who he is. He's an odious person. Get him out of here. And same goes for everyone here. Same thing happened to Tate. Similar things have happened to Elon. It's happened to Alex Jones. When left-wing people do or say things that are just as bad, just as racist or just as violent or whatever, it's always with them, oh, well, I'm sure he was joking. Hassan Piker can say, we deserve 9/11. As far as I know, he's still on Twitch. I'm not. But what is materially different from saying America deserved 9/11? 3,000 souls innocent were killed. We deserve that. That's a fine statement. You're on Twitch and Twitter, and there's no censorship. When Destiny says, I think Palestinians should be genocided, ha ha ha, he's still on YouTube. He's still on all these platforms. Nobody even thinks twice. When Nick Fuentes makes a joke, hang on, when I say something like, oh, whatever I said, I don't want to say it again because I don't want to get banned. Oh, well, he's a horrible person. He's an avowed neo-Nazi. Look at what, they're going to reprint the quote like Ed Krasenstein did without the laughing or the tone. And that's BS. Like, let's just be honest. Everyone can recognize what's going on there.
So let me, Destiny, hold on, guys. Guys.
Nick, just a quick question. Just on that specific point.
Before that point, Sully, just because there was something mentioned, it's important, sensitive thing. So, Destiny, on the joke that Nick, and obviously it's a joke that many will find insensitive, offending, etc. On the joke of you being a more despicable person, I think he said, than Hitler. Now, I think he meant it as a joke. Do you think such jokes, Destiny, you said that Nick is on your blacklist. Do you think such jokes should be censored or they should be allowed? What's your position on that, Destiny?
If you're
Then I'll go to
talking
Philippe.
legally, I think you should be allowed to joke about whatever you want to joke about. But again, like the problem again is like the advocates for freedom of speech here are so like fucking boring and dishonest. Like Fuentes is not banned for telling jokes. Fuentes is banned because he jokes about things he actually believes, right? The difference between like me and Fuentes is if you ask me, Destiny, do you think all the Palestinians should be genocided? I mean, if you listen to the rest of that clip, I go, man, it's like a really fucked situation. I don't know how it's going to end. It seems like there's no way out. Like that's my answer. If you ask Nick, do you really think that like Jews run 70% of the world and the white race is being bred out of existence by mass immigration that's facilitated by secret Jewish financiers who also control all of our foreign policy and make us allegiant to Israel, and they've done this for thousands of years, and that's why they're kicked out of every single. He'd be like, well, yeah, you know, and also, you know, 6 million cookies, right? Like the difference is Nick isn't joking.
No, but
Destiny,
Destiny,
again, like, just own it. Just
Destiny,
own it.
quick question. No, but Destiny, like, do you not agree that a person can ask a question? So they can believe in a certain ideological position and then ask a question that people would find harmful or find it emotionally hurting. As an example, you said, you know, you're anti-Islam or you're Islamophobic, and then you make jokes about it. So you can clearly have a position and yet make jokes about it, right?
Well, yeah, no. But if you were to ask me, Destiny, why do you make jokes against Islam? I wouldn't be a pussy and say, oh, bro, I'm just joking. I would say, because I don't like Islam. I really don't. I hate the religion. Like, I would be honest about it. I'm not going to say to you, be like, oh, no,
yeah, but
jokes.
so let me ask Nick. And this is the thing. So why is and this is the real question people are asking, like, why is Destiny able to make those comments and someone like Nick gets banned? So Nick, same question to you. Your position in terms of whether you believe that certain people run the world or whatever it is, I mean, have you hid from that position? Like, that's his argument.
Absolutely not. No, but here's the difference. People are not saying, oh, you believe that Jews have disproportionate influence in media. I don't think anyone would even disagree with that. I don't even think Jews would disagree with that. Also, it's an empirical question. So people, if they're interested, can go and look it up. You know, it's actually not a completely subjective question. It's actually quite objective. But that's not what people accuse me of. And that's like a very slippery way to frame it. When Destiny says they should be genocided, so of course I don't believe they should be genocided. Okay, fair enough. People watch my speech from a year ago or 2 years ago, and they say, oh, he wants to kill all people that aren't like him. In the same speech, I say, we love everyone. We love even our enemies. We need to pray for them. We need mercy and compassion towards them. We don't need cruelty. I think even in that same speech, not even about Jewish people or Israel, in that same speech, I said, when I look at homosexuals and transsexuals, I don't like all the cruelty visited upon them. We need to pray for them. We need to bring them into the church, blah, blah, blah. So it's like the same speech where people say, oh, Nick said he wants to kill everyone and all of his opponents. I'm literally as Destiny said with his comments about genociding Palestinians, if you look at the full context, it's completely misrepresented. The difference is the ADL and the SPLC aren't clipping Destiny's joke and throwing it on social media every time he makes a post. The difference is when an article is written about Destiny, there isn't a preamble that says Destiny, a live streamer who said Palestinians should be genocided, but they do that for me. Every unfortunate thing, joke, exaggeration, whatever you want to call it, always with the most uncharitable interpretation, that is on my Wikipedia. That is the preamble of every article written about me. And I'm not going to hide behind my real views. Okay.
Are you saying that all of that was taken out of context?
Saying that we're going to kill everybody or whatever? Yeah, it absolutely is taken out of context. I mean, we have to give me a specific example.
How many Jews do you think died in the Holocaust? Well, there's a specific question. How many Jews died in the Holocaust?
So Nick, just a quick question, right? When you've explained the disparity in terms of the rules, like basically Destiny can attack Islam, Muslims, and he's got no problems, and you have been banned. Now the question becomes, when you know that that's the level of Sophia that we live in, that there is this disparity, do you then, like, now you made a joke, didn't you, right? And it was clearly a joke, but now that could be snipped and that could maybe be used to get you banned or whatever it may be. So does that make you become, you know, does that make you become, well, obviously it hasn't, but should it then make you become a lot more careful in even the jokes you make?
No, absolutely not. Because what I have learned, because I've been doing this for a little while now, longer than many people, what I've learned is it doesn't matter actually what you say or how carefully you say it. Keith Woods is on here. He just jumped on the space. This is a guy who, I mean, me and my followers, it's like an inside joke that his streams are so, they don't have any rhetoric. They don't have any, there's no jokes. It's very dry. It's all philosophy. This guy is like the most controlled, disciplined, And by controlled, I mean he has self-control, not like controlled op. I mean he's self-controlled, restrained, disciplined. And even when he got popular last year for the ban, he started the Ban the ADL campaign, hashtag, they dug up like a tweet from 2 years prior where he said something like sarcastically, oh, I guess I'm a raging anti-Semite because blah, blah, blah. The ADL cut that, and now every time there's an article about Keith Woods, it says self-avowed raging anti-Semite. One tweet from years ago said in an obviously, I mean, Keith knows the details, so he can reproduce the tweet, but it was so obviously, he wasn't saying, hey, it was obviously rhetorical, it's obviously sarcastic. So it doesn't matter. All the videos, all these dry videos about Platonism and, video essays and articles about birth rates in a very measured academic way. He said one thing sarcastic one time. They dug in, found it. Some researcher reproduced it. Now he forever will be known as the self-avowed raging anti-Semite. So I've seen many things like that. So the question is, do you like self-censor and impose a chilling effect? And, we can't be funny. We can't make jokes. We can't be rhetorical. We have to kind of go through this translator and be, as Tate said at the beginning, you neuter yourself. They want you neutered with the chilling effect from these free speech regulations. Or do you just kind of go out? I feel like I have filled up the room with such a cacophony. Like there's just like this ambient perception of me as this like vaguely horrible person. Now I can say whatever I want. Now I can say whatever. And, and I think people can recognize if they watch my show. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot and then get Destiny's thoughts. I'm going to ask you a tough question.
Sure.
And I'm pretty confident you will not get banned answering that question. But what is the most controversial belief that you currently hold? And the mic is yours. It doesn't matter how controversial it is, because then my next question for Destiny and anyone else would be, should that belief be censored? Should the ability to speak about that belief be censored? Nick, the mic is yours.
Okay. Well, I would say the biggest taboo right now is talking about Jewish people, because I talk about race and I talk about gender and a lot of things. And the biggest taboo is, as we all know, talking about Jewish people's influence, and they could be right wing or left wing. I think, though, it seems like the influence of Israel is maybe the biggest one, because even conservatives talk about George Soros. So I would say it's Jewish influence. And my answer for that is I think that only Christians should be in power in America. And I don't know the details of how you'd work that out in terms of if you pass a law or there's a qualification, but I think that we should have all Christian legislators and Christian presidents and Christian Supreme Court judges. So I would say that's probably my most controversial.
I'd say taboo number one. We've discussed this point in previous spaces. I want to ask you, and Keith, I'm going to go to you in a second, but give me one more, Nicholas, and then we'll go Nick, and then we'll go to Destiny afterwards. The second taboo thing, and I've got a quote here about. I'm going to read out a quote. Could be out of context. Maybe it could be the second one when you said it could be a joke as well. We need to go back to burning women alive more. Again, if I took it out of context, I do apologize. But can you maybe elaborate that quote? And could that be the second most taboo belief that you hold? Which I'd be surprised if you actually hold that belief.
I see your co-host thumbs down that one. I wonder, she didn't like that I said I want to burn women alive. That's obviously a joke. And if you look at the whole context of that clip, I said in a very deadpan way, I'm like, women are casting spells and they're becoming witches. In the Middle Ages, they used to throw them in the river. They used to burn them alive. I'm like, and here they are lying on the stand about, I think in that case it was Johnny Depp. I'm like, they're lying about Johnny Depp casting spells. I'm like, we got to burn these women alive. Obviously a joke.
Oh, okay. I'd put that I'd put that in an extremely bad joke, but yes.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Your reaction is what makes it funny.
Yeah.
I would stand as tribute for you to burn me at the stake, but you'd have to be tied to me.
What would be before Ed and Keith, just 2 seconds. So Nick, what would be the second most taboo belief that you hold? And I want Destiny's thoughts on either of these, whether they should be censored. And I'll ask Ed the same question and then Keith.
Probably my other one is that race is real. I'm a race realist. I think that there's genetic differences between the races as opposed to everything being environmental. So, I mean, and those are broad categories of talking about Jewish people, talking about biological diversity, human biological diversity. That's what people would say is the dissident right. Those are like the two biggest taboo things they believe. And then so for me, I guess that those would probably be the big two.
So Destiny, these are two beliefs. And I'm guessing you disagree with. So should Nick have the right to speak about those two topics on any social media platform, not just X?
I mean, personally, I think that if you're large enough of a social media platform and you're hosting political conversations, I think almost any kind of mainstreamish, like if more than 1% of people believe in it, there should probably be conversation happening about it. So I would say that everything he's brought up, yeah, you should be able to talk about on most mainstream like social media platforms, assuming political conversations happen here, right? Like if you've got like a social media website for, you know, people talking about, you know, their cats and dogs, then I can understand banning the speech there. But for places like Facebook or X, you know, Twitter, like I can understand people wanting to have those conversations here, and you should be able to. But again, I would like to repeat the same thing I've said a million times. It is so boring that nobody will actually present what it is they actually believe. I don't know if it's strategy or I don't know if it's cowardice, but like
what is it do you think that I'm hiding? I mean, just
you
say,
just said
say
two
it straight
things
up.
that are objectively true that everybody believes in. Like Jews have a disproportionate.
So what am I hiding?
Jewish
What
people
am I
have
hiding?
a
What am I hiding?
I can
and
finish
not
speaking.
saying?
I can say it.
Well, I
just
can give a reason why people would hide their beliefs on that. I can give a reason why people would hide their beliefs on that. I mean, Destiny.
Wait. If you want to hide your beliefs, that's fine. But then say that. Be like, yo, I'm not going to say what I actually believe because I'm not.
Yeah, but
what is
you're muddying the waters because
I can't say it. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't.
Go ahead and say it.
I can't. Okay.
Go ahead right now.
Say a minute ago that the Jewish thing was a myth, and that like Jewish people don't have a disproportionate amount of power in the media. And now you're just saying it's an objectively true thing.
It's two things, okay? One, Jews obviously have a disproportionate amount, and far more than the media, probably politically.
I'm not hearing what I'm hiding. I'm not hearing what I'm hiding. You made that accusation 3 times. I'm not hearing an example.
Can I finish a sentence? I know you're
excited.
Yeah,
answer the question. Answer the question. You're talking about other stuff.
I'm trying to, but you cut me off like every.
No, you're not. You're going in another direction. Name one specific example because you said it now like 5 times.
Yeah,
oh, you're hiding.
I'm gonna have to repeat this. I'm trying to get my answer.
Say it.
Eventually, you'll let me do it. I know you're excited.
Let's hear
it.
If say the example then.
Yes. So the idea that Jews disproportionately represent some part of like the power structures is not the controversial nor the strong claim. That is an objectively true claim that everyone can see. The strong claim is the idea that there is a secret cabal of Jewish people that are working to undermine other races across the world that are coordinating and working through all of those structures of power. That's the controversial belief. That's the thing that you believe in and you preach. But then you come onto these platforms and you give the weak take of like, don't you think that like most of the peoples in charge are like kind of more Jewish than like they really should be? Or the same thing with like the race and IQ thing. Like everybody who's reasonable to anything should acknowledge that there's going to be genetic differences, probably even genetic differences between groups of people. But that's not your claim. Your claim is black people are dumber due to genetic reasons on whole versus white people. Like that's the strong claim. You make the weak claim that is like everybody believes in it, but then like the strong claim goes unsaid, and that's usually what people are upset about. Which you can argue.
Yeah, okay. So let me
own up, like man up and own your positions. Don't like say the most milquetoast, like obviously true things ever, and leave all the controversy, behind you. That's weak.
Yeah, see, the difference is that when you say these things, you're rephrasing them in the liberal perception way. You say, well, if you believe in race realism, that means you believe black people are dumb. No, if you believe in human biodiversity, you believe that there are genetic differences between people. IQ is a heritable trait, and blacks have a lower average IQ on average than white people. That's also a statistical fact. That's also true in SAT scores. It's also true in IQ tests globally and in America. I've never hid from that. I said that in front of a crowd of black people at Iowa State. I said that in front of Myron. Hang on, and Myron is here. I said that in front of a panel of all black women on Fresh and Fit.
That's a fact.
Because you're just reframing what I'm saying.
I'm not reframing it.
You're saying that if someone believes in genetic differences, then that means that you believe black people are dumb.
No,
and if you say that Jewish people influence society, you believe in a shadowy cabal where they're like evil wizards and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
so it's like, of course I'm not going to say the caricature and the reframing that you're giving it because you disagree. You don't like that people find it persuasive. That's why you put me on a blacklist and said, I will never stream a Nick Fuentes.
Because you're not saying anything controversial.
Then you got to show up to derail and disrupt and say, oh, all the persuasive stuff. Well, he's just lying. There's secret evil views that he has that you just aren't hearing right now. So that's why you're going to break your one rule. You come on the podcast, even though you quote unquote.
I know you're obsessed with comic book villains.
Because as you said, I do like that movie. Because as you said a couple of years ago, you don't like when people like me talk to a large audience. I mean, you're the one that's hiding a
7 people
agenda.
DM me to come here. Okay, so I decided to come and hang out.
That's weird. My career was over.
Real quick reframing.
Hold on. Just Ed and Keith. I want to ask you both the same question. It's like seeing that back and forth between Nick and Destiny. Is there anything in that back and forth that should have been censored? Is there anything anything that could have, that could be considered hate speech or could have led to violence and should not be allowed on X or any other platform?
Look, I think it should be up to the platform itself. If a platform wants to censor certain types of hate speech or certain types of incitement of violence, I think they should be able to do that. I also think,
even despite sorry to interrupt you, Ed, but despite the amount of influence they have now compared to 10, 20 years ago, like if you give them that right now and they all just meet in one room, they can essentially control speech around the world.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's their right as a corporation. I don't, like.
Ed, what's the platform's primary objective?
The platforms. What platform are you referring to?
All of them. Why do social media companies exist? What's their primary objective?
To make money.
To make money. And you're saying that they should be allowed to ban certain speech they don't like if that allows them to make more money, correct?
I believe, as in capitalism, I believe that's the way it should be.
So if Pfizer came along and decided to give a bunch of money to one of these social media platforms, would they allow anti-COVID vaccine conversations and speech or vaccine injury proof on their platform, or would they censor it to make as much money as possible?
I think it's up to them as a corporation to do as they please. Just like Donald Trump with Truth Social has censored liberals from his site.
That's fine. But we're talking about people.
I think Elon Musk has the absolute right to run it the way he wants to do it.
That's fine.
And under his terms, that is, as long as something doesn't break the law, and I guess that can be subjective to some, like what's going on in Brazil. I think that's his right, and I think if that's the best way to run it, that his platform will probably succeed.
Cool. So vaccine. I understand what you're saying. So vaccine injuries do exist. However, the platform's objective is to make as much money as possible, and Pfizer is funding the platform, so they're going to pretend vaccine injuries do not exist. So they are purporting a false version of reality. They are creating and aiding the matrix and making people believe a version of reality that is not true, primarily for financial profit. And those with the global centralized capital can control narratives and can control the world even at a better level than most political parties. Would you agree with that?
Unmute, Ed. I'd give you, because
wait, Pfizer is not even worth that much money. Why would we assume Pfizer can control speech on?
It's an example, Destiny.
Yeah, see,
Ed, go ahead.
so you keep blaming it on the advertiser or a company that's paying these companies. It's up to the media companies, up to their shareholders, what's in the best interest of those companies. That's how capitalism works in America. That's what I think most conservatives embrace. They embrace capitalism. Let the companies make up their own mind. If one business idea is not going to work out, if people don't like that, they're going to move to another platform. And we're seeing that with a lot of people who are moving away from Facebook and onto X because they don't like this level of censorship they're getting on other platforms. So they move to X. Just like the media. You can watch Fox News, you can watch News Nation, you can watch, there's a plethora of different media outlets that you can consume if you don't like what one media outlet's putting out there. It's not the government saying, oh, the media can't talk about the Pfizer vaccine or say that it has side effects. If that would be an infringement on the First Amendment. But in capitalistic society, these companies can run the way they want without government interference. So if the government starts interfering and saying you can't run your platform how you want, then that's going to be the government interference, and that's going to be against the First Amendment.
Okay, well, that's another argument because there was Twitter files and there's a whole
and the Twitter files also. I mean, the Twitter files showed that a lot of stuff went on. People requested a lot of things to be removed, and Twitter, being a publicly run company, publicly held company, they made up their mind on what they believed was best for their shareholders.
Let me simplify the question. Do you believe the people? So what you're effectively saying, we agree on the fact that those with the money can control certain narratives and how they're perceived and discussed. Would you agree with that?
Those with money definitely have more control. Yes.
Yes, and they can control on a public forum how certain things are perceived and discussed because they have the money. And when I say advertise, what I truthfully mean is donate and lobby. That's what they do. They donate and lobby to platforms to get their point of view across.
Yeah, of course, on certain platforms they can, but on certain platforms they can't. Like, let's say X, for example.
Well, absolutely, because it's free speech. So this is where we're going back into I'm only going back over this because we talked about it earlier when you guys were saying the primary objective of the media is to make money.
That is the primary objective. I mean, there's really no arguing that.
Okay, well, if that's their case, then they're going to take money from the large centralized power structures and they're going to purport any false version of reality that it takes them to make as much money as possible. And the people who donated the money to make as much money as possible. Objective truth has nothing to do with anything.
If that's in the best interest of the shareholders, Perhaps. I'd like to think that shareholders have an ethical side of things too, and if they see that happening, they're not going to be as interested in investing in that company. So, I mean, I think the board of directors and the shareholders are going to have the ultimate say there, and I don't think most people want that.
But do you, Ed? Do you think Ed? Do you think? Hold on, Ed. Do you think you were censored for money?
What was? I didn't hear you.
Do you think your account, you and Brian's accounts, were banned for monetary purposes? Did they make more money by banning you guys?
No.
Do you say that contradicts the point
our accounts were banned?
They broke the rules, didn't they?
They thought we were. They thought purchased their accounts, which we didn't.
No, sorry. What I meant was they thought you did. It wasn't because you had said like an impact on society, and that's the reason they wanted to ban you, right?
They banned me. Yeah, they banned our accounts because they thought we were breaking their terms of service. But I would add that was a business decision that they thought would help the business. So
do you think Andrew? Sorry, Brian. I thought it was Ed. Brian, do you think Andrew Tate or Nick Fuentes, they were banned because the platforms wanted to make more money? Because Stripe wanted to make more money, they banned them.
Yeah, I do. I think that they saw them as somebody hampering advertising.
And do you think that's do you think this model is flawed, where advertisers
hampering their image? I think hampering their image, which hampers their revenue, right?
That's just an alibi.
Let me ask a simpler question. So you're saying effectively that mainstream media will lie for money, correct?
Well, I mean, if you lie as a mainstream media outlet and you're caught in that lie, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt your revenue.
That's not what I asked. I'm asking, do you if I use Pfizer because it's the example we used earlier before Destiny has a breakdown. If Pfizer come along and they are sponsoring, donating, advertising, lobbying, whatever you want to call it, X amount of hundreds of millions of dollars to your news network, and you're talking pro-vaccine, would the mainstream media lie for money?
I mean, I think that depends on the individual who's making that decision. But I mean, if I was running the mainstream media, I certainly wouldn't. I mean, I think you have a reputation. If you get caught in a lie, that's going to hurt you monetarily in the long run. It's going to hurt you from a standpoint
well, that would be true unless your primary objective was to spread lies and for you to be paid to spread lies. And as long as you spread the lies, you continue to get paid because nobody buys what you sell anyway.
Well, I don't think none of these companies have the money to solo fund like an entire social media platform. Like, I feel like the analysis stops with, if somebody pays you $100 to lie, will you do it? The answer is yes, but everybody that's a large creator on this platform knows that if you got paid $100 to lie, you wouldn't take it, because if people found out you were lying, your losses would be way more than the little bit of money you'd get paid to do the lie.
That's crazy. People pay you, man. We're talking billions. Your marriage not exploding.
Kind of like, Nick, how you lie about everything they do. So, for instance, we were talking about deplatforming, and Nick is talking about the blacklist that we're on. The only reason Nick, by the way, is
back to what Andrew was saying.
Guys, 2 seconds.
Scam reporting people.
Andrew, but the what you said is that I think the media will lie for money. I think you're right there, and I think Ed cannot disagree. But then, isn't that going to be their downfall? Like, this is not sustainable either, because they eventually lose trust.
This is the missing element. They will lie for money, and then we're talking about how that's going to damage their reputation, which has happened. Nobody trusts them. Nobody believes them anymore. And everyone's missing the very obvious point that it's their job to lie for money. They've always lied for money. They'll tell any narrative they're told to tell by the big money and the big finance.
No, but who are they?
Who are they? To lie for money.
Andrew,
why would they?
Like, can you name an individual? Is it the CEO of CNN? Is it, like who is?
It's global. It's going to change, right? The COVID-19 narrative is different than the Ukraine narrative. Perhaps they're all on the same.
Yeah, but you can't paint everybody. Maybe Andrew, I'm sure there's some people who would lie for money. I'm sure there's some people who would lie for money. You're right. But to say that the mainstream media would lie for money, like everybody in the mainstream media, their goal is to lie for money, just to put money in their pockets, and they're willing to tell lies. That's ridiculous. I mean, you're judging every individual person.
It's not ridiculous.
No,
it's why
it's absolutely ridiculous.
How about if they promote vaccine misinformation? People were all losing their jobs if they were to promote anti-vaccine content or anti-vaccine misinformation, which has direct harm to the people that are getting these injuries. Like, we're talking about a misinformation that has direct harm to humans. And Andrew's bringing up a point where if they lie for money when Pfizer is paying them, which they did during COVID, and then they're not reporting on vaccine injuries, then this is a lie that has direct harm to humans. Are
we saying, should those be banned? Should that be made illegal? If you lie and you get paid money for it, should that be like a free speech thing where you're in trouble for that?
Well,
What if people get hurt?
here's the pertinent point, though. I feel like we're missing, guys. I feel like we're missing a very pertinent point. The only reason mainstream media exists at all is to lie. I don't know why we're trying to pretend that's not the case. The reason it
I think
exists
that's a
and is
ridiculous
pumped out
statement.
free everywhere all of the time and forced on everyone's throat all of the time in every single lobby everywhere is to lie. They get their objectives that they're supposed to purport to the populace. Their job is to lie. And to sit and say, well, if they lie, they won't be trusted. Correct. Nobody trusts them. Correct. They've been lying for money all this time. That's exactly where we are. So how is this confusing for
Andrew,
anybody?
when does a media outlet become the mainstream media or part of the mainstream media? At what point?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, you have state broadcasters for a lot of countries, and I'm sure that in each different country, you have their state broadcaster with their particular narrative they want to push and enforce. I'm sure the Chinese state broadcaster and the Russian state broadcaster and the British state broadcaster will look at the same series of events with a completely different spin and a completely different narrative that they'll try and push to the populace, which they think is best in their national interest, which means it comes from above. It's not organic. It's not just accidental. They put together the narratives they're told to, and they push it to the population. They're professional liars.
Yeah,
That is their job.
don't you think that every media outlet wants to reach that point of being considered the mainstream media because that means they're the biggest media in the country? So at a certain point, you become part of the mainstream. At a certain point, you become part of the mainstream media, right?
Those five.
So at that point, do you just start lying? I mean, it's a ridiculous narrative. Sure,
What's ridiculous to say that there's like a
happens.
free market for media. There's 5 major conglomerates that own most of the media. So to pretend this idea of like, well, they're rising and falling and they're in competition. There's like 5 major
they rise and fall.
that control most of the media.
Slow process.
And there is some, within margin, but nobody would ever say that like some tiny publication that could be founded by an individual is going to blow up and compete with the big 5 conglomerates like News Corp and 21st Century Fox and Disney. So it's just,
and they wouldn't let it. Guys. Let's be hyper realistic here. I said earlier about the control of people and influence over people is the only true war. Tanks and bullets are the final last resort to do that. It's much easier to use social media and narrative control and the MSM, etc., to control a populace as opposed to putting them all at gunpoint. The idea that you can just stand up and tell the truth and you're going to have a broadcasting organization inside of the UK bigger than the BBC and you're just going to talk against the government and you're just going to tell the truth and be Mr. Honest and they're going to let you get bigger than the BBC without catching a fucking bullet is asinine. Look at what's happening to people who have Twitter accounts. Not just my story, Nick's story, Alex Jones' story. There's a bunch of people with Twitter accounts who end up in a cell for having a Twitter account, let alone a broadcasting corp. To sit and believe that, who becomes the mainstream and you can just go and make a news channel and maybe you'll get in. It's one big club and you're not in it.
So
And it's
Andrew, you
control.
haven't answered my question before. So when you say they, the mainstream media, are you talking about, let's say, Chris Cuomo when he was on CNN? Are you talking like is he being fed this information that he's only allowed?
Well, I'll be honest. I'll be very honest with you. What I think of mainstream news broadcasters, I think they're idiots who are dragged from obscurity and they sit down in front of a teleprompter. And I think anybody can do their job. And Don Lemon's monumental failure has proved that perfectly because since he left CNN, nobody's given a shit. I think he has 500 views on any of his videos. He's some random idiot they plucked from obscurity, sat him down, he read the teleprompter. It's not about who reads the teleprompter, sir. It's about who decides what's on the teleprompter in the first place. That's the actual discussion we're having here. It's nothing to do with which jackass could sell his soul and sit down and read the garbage.
So many of those shows that individual, whoever has that show, they have their team, and they're not necessarily being fed everything they have to say. They're allowed to have opinions themselves. See, this is
my friend, and I call you my friend.
I'm glad you're calling me your friend.
By the fact I'm about to call you an idiot because you're an idiot, sir.
Tucker Carlson said the exact same thing, that he had basically full editorial privileges.
Didn't Tucker get fired for having an opinion that went outside of the narrative?
No, Tucker got fired because he almost cost Fox News $1 billion for lying on air. It's funny that you defend the fact that he had an original opinion. What you're actually defending is misinformation and lies, which is supposed to be something you guys are against, I thought.
Which opinion was this? That's not what I heard. Tell me, please.
The Fox News, the Dominion lawsuit. There were texts that were leaked from him where he admitted that he was lying on air about claims that Sidney Powell had made to him, and he was tired of lying to his audience about things about the Dominion voting machines being rigged.
Well, I don't know. That's
you
a
don't
lie
know
at
anything
all.
because you don't read
Firstly, and then
media.
I
That's
heard
why
a
you're out
very
here saying things like
I
they get
ha-
marching orders from everybody. You don't know how any of these media companies are structured. You don't know where the teams get their information from. People that work in media are the most like social media hungry people in the universe. You think that all these people in all these networks across all these countries are getting fed the same marching orders and nobody's leaked anything, nobody's complained about anything, nobody's said anything? And why do we think that mainstream media is any more insulated from these problems than alternative media is? You guys will make fun of the marching orders from mainstream media, but I bet every single alternative media guy in here is anti-vax, thinks COVID came from a bioweapons lab, thinks that Russia has a right to invade Ukraine, thinks that all the charges against Donald Trump are made up, thinks that we shouldn't be supporting Israel. Like, you guys have literally copy-pasted the same opinions between every single one of you, and you guys are talking like an army of NPCs about how the mainstream media gives you like fabricated opinions. Like, it doesn't even make sense.
Yes, we do all think the truth. That is
crazy. You have
something I would agree with.
perspective there, huh? But when you all think the same thing, it's not a conspiracy, but when the mainstream media does, it is a conspiracy. Crazy how that works.
Conflicting points of view. I just said that different state-sponsored broadcasters would have conflicting.
But they don't.
points
Do you
of view, so
do you watch any media? Have you followed any media? They don't.
Of course,
typically
if you
have
watch
conflicting opinions. When you're reporting on international media, the stories are more or less the same.
Segment and a BBC segment, they often directly conflict.
No, very rarely. On the facts, no. Maybe if you're watching a pundit or you're reading op-eds, they will. But if you have any amount of media literacy, a really great example that works against your Israel stuff, by the way, was the reporting of that Al-Alasi hospital bombing, where everybody was saying that Israel bombed that parking lot. Every single mainstream media outlet in the world ran with that story for 2 days. I mean, how did that work if Israel controls the media? Or how does that work if they all give conflicting accounts and reports? It's because they don't. It's because everybody relies on, like, people that are reporting on the ground. It goes through their media teams. They publish what they think is right. Sometimes people fuck up. There doesn't have to be a top-down conspiracy to explain why.
They should change the headlines very quickly, Destiny.
After more information came out. Yes, sir. That's how it works.
When fake news came out.
This is so naive. There have been so many lies, specifically about wars. It's insane that you would even bring that up. Before the 2020 election, there was a big story about how Russians were putting a bounty on the head of American soldiers in Iraq. You remember this? And they said Trump is allying with Russia, who's killing our soldiers. Then a year after, and by the way, that's after the election, they came out and said, yeah, that wasn't true. They came out and said, see, well, we source our intelligence on the ground. Some of it has a high degree of confidence and some of it has a low degree. And this one had no degree of confidence. But it took them a year to correct it after it had already served its purpose. Same thing with the Hunter Biden laptop. They totally put the lid on that one because they said, we were told it's Russian disinformation. Turned out to be authentic after the election, just like the 40 beheaded babies. 40 beheaded babies, 40 babies and their heads are off. I can't believe it. And then they found out in December, after Israel had already invaded, after they blockaded Gaza, after everything, they said, oh yeah, that was all fabricated. It's a complete lie. Same thing with Ukraine. I remember when we debated, they said Russia blew up a nuclear reactor because they're trying to do another Chernobyl. Turned out that was bullshit. So those are just like off the top of my head, 5 examples about 3 different conflicts where, they reported it serves its purpose, and then they revise it a year later after they got what they wanted. And you, because you believe their alibi, because you don't understand the distinction between power and powerless, between government and people, you say, no, I think they got more information. They found out that the propaganda that they created for their efficient purpose, they found out that was a lie because, these are just really earnest people like you and I trying to get it right, as opposed to very interested parties in government, finance, wherever you find it. So those are just a few examples off the top of my head. They learn more information, just like in Iraq, right?
People
they
just
learned
get
there were no
stories
weapons of
wrong.
mass
Maybe
destruction in
it's
Iraq.
possible because it happened on the other side too. How many people were saying, oh, there's no way that Russia's going to invade Ukraine? That's bullshit. The U.S. intelligence must be lying because Nick said that they lie about the intel all the time. Well, guess what? That happened. Oh, well, there are no fighters in Al-Shifa hospital. That can't possibly be the case. Oh, whoops, we found CCTV footage that shows otherwise. Oh, no, hydroxychloroquine is a way better drug than remdesivir. Like, oh, this is going to be the ivermectin is going to save all of us. Oh, looks like none of that was true. Oh, people get things wrong. Some people lie. Like, you have to be intelligent enough to call out fault. That wasn't even a syllogism.
That's a false syllogism.
No,
yes, it is.
Even a syllogism, dipshit. Listen, people get things wrong sometimes. You have to be more intelligent. You got to be more sophisticated when you go through media. And you have to understand sometimes people fuck up and they get shit wrong. Sometimes people do lie. But why the fuck would you trust people who in alternative media who are like teams of like 1 to 4 highly ideologically driven data-driven people versus entire media conglomerates that are being fact-checked or have like, you know, dozens or sometimes hundreds of workers in some of these offices. Like the ability for you to
do you know about the
is going to be way
CIA's
higher.
involvement? How much do you know about the CIA's history of influencing media?
Because I amazing question. I don't know. How much do you know about?
I just don't. I often don't hear people like you and Ed and Brian digging into the history of the national intelligence state directly influencing media, like
because
through history. I don't mean
history,
necessarily
because
today.
history is different. Like if you want to talk about U.S. foreign policy between like the 40s and before the, you know, the fall of the Soviet Union, that's going to be a different type of foreign policy, a different approach than our foreign policy over the past like 34 years. Also, the ability to sneak or hide different things is going to be different when everybody is carrying around a video camera and a recorder. Like the ability to do things covertly is a lot easier back in the day when people were typewriting to each other or.
Like the Hunter Biden laptop
I have to go. So I want to ask.
Yeah, do your thing, Andrew.
Sorry, brother. I have to go. So I just want to ask a really quick question. Destiny, I want to understand your worldview because you and I have a different worldview, it seems, especially on girlfriends, etc. But we won't go down that path. Do you think it would be prudent and professional for a country to allow its state broadcaster, which speaks to its populace, to report whatever it wanted and whatever it discovered, without any kind of moderation or input, even if it was directly adverse to the goals and aims of the national security of said country or the military-industrial complex of that country? Do you think they would allow the state broadcaster to just report whatever it wanted fairly without anyone telling them what to say or any narratives to hold, even if it's directly counter to the interests of very powerful entities within that nation? Do you believe that we operate in a world that fair?
Because
do you think that would be prudent and professional?
Confidence is a valuable thing. And if your country doesn't trust you, doesn't trust the media, if it doesn't trust the leaders, and if you've got ways to hold them accountable, like via voting, then yeah, if you fuck around with your population and people find out, you're going to be held accountable for it. Arguably, that's why Trump won his election. You know, you can say that like, oh, well, the media lies to everybody and everybody lies to everybody. That might be true. Fine. Then why the fuck should we believe anything any of you guys say, right? At that point, you're in an epistemic, you know, nihilistic black hole of nothingness where you can't believe anybody.
The fact that you believe a country X, will have military aims, it will have agricultural aims, it will have political ambitions, it will have trade aims, whatever they are, to compete in this globalized market, and they need their population to believe a certain point of view to be as competitive as possible against the other nations, and they're just going to allow their state broadcaster to broadcast whatever they want, even if it's counter to their own narratives and interests, is so ridiculously naive. That's not what happened.
Naive. You don't even understand how markets work.
Let me just finish because I'm about to drive. I'm about to drive, my friend.
That companies with a market cap of $100 billion have more say in our
the Daily Mail starts talking about war with Russia in the UK only a fucking couple months ago. Endless war with Russia, conscription, how it needs to happen. On a dime, all of the BBC, all of the British news starts talking about how important it is to go to war with Russia, because that's the aim that they had from their military industrial complex. And the broadcaster and the media arm of the government works directly with their foreign policy aims. It's all directly going together. Not a single newspaper printed, "This is dumb shit. Nobody should go to get their ass whooped by the Russians." Not a single one, because they are not allowed to.
If that's the case, then why didn't Trump shut down all negative media about him when he was president? If that's the case, why didn't Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Barack Obama shut down all negative media about them? You guys bring up the best counterexample to you is that Hunter Biden laptop story. Why did that get censored for one day? Why wasn't that story completely killed?
Oh yeah, that wasn't heavily
wait. Why wasn't that story killed completely? That is the most talked about story. Your example of media censorship is like the most talked about story in the past 10 years of online media.
It's talked about online on social media, yes, but it was suppressed in the MSM. Which
it was suppressed on Twitter.
You're right.
No, the New York Post
in every story by doing what Nick says.
The big deal about Twitter was the big deal about the New York Post story was it being suppressed on Twitter and Facebook, but it came back in like a day. So the question is, if
Google right now,
Destiny, quick question. Control things so well, why didn't they shut that story down completely?
Destiny, let me ask you a question on that. Isn't that because they censored it because there was a specific reason to do so? Because the reason you censor it is because you want the election to go in a certain way. Once the election's over,
didn't the intel agencies tell them to do that? Didn't the intel agencies tell them to suppress
if you actually read the Twitter files, I know how much you hate
51 CIA experts.
No, they didn't. No. Nobody told Twitter to censor the New York Post story. They literally leaked the emails where they talk about censoring the story. I don't know why you guys say the intelligence agencies told them to do it.
So all of the mainstream media all ran with "this has been debunked," and they all cited the letter that came from the National Security State, which was signed by 51 intel operatives.
They didn't say that it was debunked. They said it looked like Russian misinformation.
Exactly.
Honest,
and so then they started all of their
did.
articles with that statement in order to frame it in the exact same way that Nick was saying that every article about Nick is framed by the first sentence being Nicholas J. Fuentes, this, evil things, so that when you read the article, you're pre-framed to believe Nick Fuentes is an evil human, or you're pre-framed to believe that the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation.
It looked like a fishy story. Any honest actor, like I'm pretty sure at this point we all know the laptop story is real, but even looking at it,
like a fishy story.
Yeah, obviously.
Everyone in the idea,
the idea that Hunter Biden dropped off a laptop years ago to like a blind computer store owner, yeah, that is a sensational story. That sounds like bullshit. It still sounds like bullshit, even if it's true. But again, like the deep state has so much control sometimes, like censoring stories, but it couldn't have prevented the New York Post from publishing it. Why? It couldn't go and like take that hard drive out of Giuliani's.
Because
Giuliani had balls. Oh my God! So it only takes one journalist to shut down the entire. Also, by the way, like a quasi-mainstream media journalist. This is the New York Post. It's not like we're talking about like a small YouTube channel or something, right? So even
balls
the
to publish that story, and then the entire media narrative had to shift in order to discredit the story as quickly as humanly possible. And the entire national security complex mobilized and got 51 of their top experts, like ex-director of the CIA, ex-director of the NSA, the people that had architected their entire national security state, the people that had lied to us about torture, that had lied to us about WMD.
Yes, I understand. You can talk about things from 20 years ago. That's fine. But
to discredit the story as quickly as possible.
And look who broke it. The most mainstream media people in the world. Giuliani had a copy of the drive. This is a mainstream ex-mayor of New York. And then the New York Post, a mainstream media publication. Post Giuliani was not mainstream. How old are you?
So let me ask Nicholas.
I want to hear. Hold on. I want to hear this. You don't think the New York Post counts as mainstream media, and you don't think Giuliani wasn't a mainstream political figure in the United States of America?
New York Post absolutely counts as mainstream media. What I'm saying is that a singular journalist got the scent, got the trail, and decided to write the story.
But I'm asking, how is that possible? And that was a mainstream media publication. How would that be possible? The CIA and the NSA and the FBI are controlling all these things.
You clearly haven't done a lot of research on how the CIA actually do influence.
Ian, your mic is really bad, but just so what you're saying, Destiny, is that the letter that was signed by Mario. Go ahead, Keith, go ahead.
Saying is that when you actually research how the CIA influences journalists, it's not like journalists are literal robots where the CIA has a literal game controller where they actually like move their mouths. They peddle influence through payoffs or through like promotions or through just making friendships. Like it's not as simple as just saying we literally control everything that everyone says. That's not how the world works.
No,
but
it's not. Hold on, it's easier to censor one story by like contacting a journalist and threatening his family than it would be to falsely get like every single intelligence agency or like 51 different officials on board with censoring a story. It doesn't make sense. It would be way easier to get the one journalist guy like to just like show up at his house and steal the drive.
Experts worked for them.
Comey works for them. The DOJ works for them. Why did they pursue the email investigation with Hillary? Why didn't they just kill that immediately? Why did Comey ever make those announcements publicly? It hurt him a lot. Why did this story with the DOJ with a special prosecutor come out with Biden being senile? That hurts him as well. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that they report on themselves on that doesn't make them look good. Is it all plausible deniability?
Dustin, I have a question. I'm curious. Do you believe that in China the state broadcaster can just broadcast whatever it wants and whatever it discovers, or do you believe it has to work within an official narrative from the government?
In China, I think they probably have to work with official narratives within the government. This media probably works with the state.
And what about in Russia?
Yes. For publications like Saudi? RT, yes.
Saudi?
I don't know as much about Saudi media, but that would be my assumption. It's a total monarchy, yeah. Cool.
But in the West, not at all, 0%.
Well, it depends on the country you're talking about. Like the BBC gets state funding. I don't think they get state direction. PBS gets state funding. I don't think they get state direction. I think in general in the West, I don't think the media tends to operate at the behest of the state. Whereas like in monarchies or dictatorships, you tend to operate more with what the state is telling you to do. Yes.
Well, we could ask why you'd get state funding without state direction. That's one question.
Because of legislation from Congress that authorizes state funding. I mean, it's not really a huge conspiracy.
Of course, yeah, they just give money for nothing. Yeah,
money for I'm sorry. Do you think the most wealthy broadcasters work for PBS and NPR?
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I want to try and want to try and get to the end of the point, especially because I'm driving. So do you think that would allow a country to be competitive, considering that you need to have narrative control over your populace, and that we now know, and everyone in the West accepts, that China has narrative control over its populace via the state broadcaster, as does Russia, as does Saudi Arabia, as do all these other countries, and that having a news broadcasting apparatus which told the truth, even if it's against national security interests, would not allow you to be competitive as a nation state? Do you think that we're going to allow that to happen just because we care about
no, because
so
the West doesn't run the world because they dominate the narrative. The West runs the world because they dominate it militarily and economically. People don't like the United States because we've got the most bought and paid for media. They like the United States because we have the strongest navy that guarantees the most free passage through water. Because when the Houthis start firing missiles at people, it's U.S. destroyers that show up and save the waterways. They like the United States because we are a massive trading partner. We have the highest GDP in the world at this point, and we buy and sell goods like crazy. That's why people like us, not because we poison our media, but because we actually put out good results. You can't control the media. You can't media frame the way out of like horrible participation in a world economy. You just have to like actually be able to put up the numbers.
No, I don't think you understood the point I'm asking, because America as a country is in competition with other nation states.
No, but we don't compete on who can control the narrative. That's shit you do on Twitter and YouTube. We compete on who has the highest number of exports. We compete on who can facilitate like the largest like multilateral trade deals. We compete on who can guarantee safe passage through waterways. When people start blowing each other up, whose military is going to show up to make sure that your ships are safe? Those are the things that we compete on.
Cool. Understand. So you think that America has no vested interest in controlling the narratives that its own population believes in, although the CIA spends basically unlimited money ensuring that vested interests are installed in every other nation state around the world, but they don't care about their own at all. They don't care about what Americans think at all. They just care about all the other.
If you think the CIA spends unlimited money, it's because you don't know what unlimited money looks like, and you have no idea what the scale is between like CIA spending and spending of companies like Facebook or Apple or Microsoft or Amazon. Like, if you guys at least were to come on and say things like, I think that all of our foreign policy is being ran by the people that control like Apple and Facebook, that would at least make sense. But by companies that are worth, like tens of billions or like $100 billion? No, absolutely not. And also, no, the reputational hit you would take in a democracy when you elect your leaders and people catch you lying about stuff or fabricating stories or controlling the media.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you would.
We never called them lying.
Okay.
We never called them lying.
Is this supposed to be a
censor like Obama?
Nobody ever said. Hold on.
Good.
Nobody ever said. Nobody ever said they never. Nobody ever said
all of this money to influence other populations, but they have no interest at all in influencing the minds of their own populace. No, they just care about trying to influence everybody else's with their democracy and all the garbage they're doing when they're pushing it. And you're saying they don't control the narrative, which is also another rabbit hole.
Technically, your story isn't even contradictory. Even if I let you have that, because technically Americans don't really give a fuck what happens in other countries as much as their own. So you could get away with influencing other countries more than your own. Yeah, of course. But the reality is that like if you get caught doing these lies, you pay huge fucking repercussions for it. Like a lot of the country's politics.
What have they paid for COVID? What have they paid for COVID? What have they paid for the Vietnam War? What have they paid for
the media coverage for the Vietnam War was harmful to U.S. institutions? That's one of the reasons why we left Vietnam. If we controlled the media, we would have stayed in Vietnam until we saw it through. Media pressure is one of the reasons we left. Look at how unpopular the Iraq War became. You don't think Obama wanted to take a more active role in the Middle East? He couldn't, because the American public fucking hates everything in the Middle East after the Iraq War. What are you talking about? Yeah, American public heavily influences our capability of operating in different theaters of war. After Iraq and Afghanistan, we have no appetite for it.
Okay. Is this supposed to be about being unbanned, or is this about the #1 fucking news media truster to defend the State Department's agenda? Like, I don't even know what this is about anymore.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. I mean, because I thought the purpose of this space was discussing Nick's censorship. And I mean, this is like a civics lecture now from the Krasensteins and Destiny. And like, it's really interesting. People might not realize this, but yeah, Destiny has blacklisted Nick for the last few years to try and stifle his popularity.
What do you mean? Blacklisted? How? I'll ask.
Hold on.
Yeah, ask Keith. Keith, question. Yeah, question to you, Keith. Because I asked Destiny the question earlier. How did he blacklist him? What does that mean?
Why did I blacklist him?
Yeah, so Destiny refused to stream with Nick. He didn't want to help grow his popularity. Nick comes back in a day. He surpasses him on Twitter followers. And Destiny goes back to his old tactic of showing up on a Nick stream and reading Wikipedia articles, trying to make him sound bad to his guests. I mean, the central point here is supposed to be Nick's censorship. And, Destiny makes this point. He's like, oh, well, these people, they defend free speech, but then they don't want to come out and be honest about their beliefs.
This is the easiest truth test forever, right here. Like, tell me, why did I blacklist Nick?
Well, hold on.
You admit it? Can either of you admit it? No, you're going to keep pivoting.
Is he just going to keep interrupting me? I mean, he's been speaking for the last hour and a half, dominating this space.
Make him answer the question.
Go ahead, Keith. Yeah, answer the question and then continue, Keith, with the point you're making.
So Destiny says, you know, they get censored, they stand up for free speech, and they're scared to come out with their beliefs. Well, he's ignoring the fact that Destiny got his followers to mass report Nick in 2000, I think it was 2019-20 to get him banned off Twitch, because Destiny is aware of this double standard that exists for people on the right.
I'll go back, Destiny. I'll go back to you to respond right after. Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, Destiny got his followers in the past to mass report Nick, to get him banned, to take away the competition, because he knows this double standard exists. And, you know, Destiny will come on these streams and he'll say, of course, I believe in free speech. And in the past, he said, well, you know, look, you're going to get censored if you say shit people find offensive. That's just kind of how society works. Like Nick said, Destiny has said, you know, Palestinians, I'm fine with them being genocided. Hassan, who's probably the biggest leftist streamer now, I saw just a couple of weeks ago, he posted the schematic of a weapon as a quote tweet to a politician, you know, suggesting his followers should engage in violence against the politician. Now, there wasn't an SPLC hit piece, there wasn't an ADL hit piece shopped around, because they know there's obviously a double standard that operates here. This isn't some free market where the companies are looking at these individual streamers, these individual personalities, deciding who to work with. I mean, Nick used the example, perfect example, during Bandy ADL. All of these mainstream media outlets rushed to get this out that, you know, of the 10,000 tweets I've made, that they found one that was a joke about being an anti-Semite and self-avowed anti-Semite. I can give her another example. Recently, I was censored off a couple of payment processors after a Media Matters hit piece. Media Matters hit piece references an SPLC hit piece that says I'm a Holocaust denier. Now, I've literally never made a public statement about the Holocaust in my life, right? It's illegal in most of Europe. But that is shopped around. Leftists send these to payment processors, they send these to platforms.
Did they include sorry to interrupt, did they include a quote, or did they just make that statement without any quote, without any...
No, the original article that it goes back to, which is shopped around to all these various outlets now, there's no link, there's no quote. It's just put there by leftist activists. That is used to censor people. And what you realize about censorship is, you know, there's no debate or discussion going around here. These employees get these pieces handed to them by organizations that are supposed to have a reputation, like the ADL, the SPLC, and they just hit the button. And, you know, it's easy to come in with this kind of sort of naive, pluralist worldview where we're in this free market of ideas and companies are just acting in their self-interest.
Why is Nick? Why did I blacklist Nick?
You blacklisted him to stop his popularity.
Okay, so I blacklisted Nick because I'm a big free speech advocate online, and I have been for, I think, probably like 6 or 7 years.
Did you direct your followers to get Nick banned?
And Nick Fuentes, I haven't tried to get Nick banned in like 7 years. I had a huge conversation with him on Twitch. I was part of the hosting of that conversation. I didn't try to get him banned.
Mass report Nick.
Like 8 years ago. Yeah, my values have changed since then.
It keeps changing. It keeps changing.
I haven't changed it. I literally hosted a huge debate with Nick. But the reason why Nick is blacklisted, the reason why I blacklisted Nick is because as of a year ago, Nick and his group of people spam report people. You can go and watch it on the Ralph Retort. You can go and watch it on shows he's on. And he says, well, if people spam report me, I'm going to spam report them, which is ironically why I spam reported conservatives of the 2016-2017 period, because you guys spam reported everybody else too. Even large conservative figures would try to cancel other people. James Wood, the Guardians of the Galaxy dude, got canceled by fucking what? Cernovich digging up 10-year-old fucking tweets. You know, and Nick Fuentes plays the exact same game. Nick, do you acknowledge that a year ago, as recently as a year ago, that you had your audience run around and spam report people on YouTube, that you were fighting with Mr. Medicare and other people, and you would encourage people to spam report people? Or are you going to deny that or not even answer it?
Really? Did you do that to Keffels and to Hassan last year?
Why are you pivoting? Wait, do you want to answer that question?
Well, answer.
No, I asked you a question. Nick, you're the freedom of the speech guy. Nick, answer the question.
Keffels and Hassan?
Nick, oh, he won't answer the question. So that's what I mean when I say they won't own their positions.
Did you do it to Keffels and Hassan?
He's not going to answer it. And anyway, that's so just to be clear. That's why he's on my blacklist. The reason why he's on my blacklist.
So would you? I wouldn't call this. I wouldn't call this censorship. But Destiny, why it hasn't seemed to have worked? Like if you look at Nick's following now, despite all the censorship, did it help him in your opinion?
It's not about it. It helps them. I just don't like to I don't like to signal boost people that engage in like mass reporting. And Nick's community does that like crazy.
Reporting against Keffels and Hassan.
Notice how he doesn't answer the question? It's because he keeps dodging.
You're just a liar. Everyone posts, people can post the clips. Destiny had Keffels and Hassan mass reported last year. He had a tenuous explanation. Me and Destiny collaborated
Every time
a few
Nick
times.
yaps like this without answering my question, it's because he knows he doesn't have an answer to the question.
So let me
Nick is
go.
the
Yeah,
one on
Destiny,
here
let me-
talking about freedom of speech. Make him answer the question. Make him answer the question.
I'm just wondering.
I'll leave it with him. So I think both of you haven't answered the question. But Nick, I'll give you the mic again, you and Keith, because I know Keith was waiting for a long time. Either Keith go on or we'll go to Nick.
Yeah, let me jump in here. So
let him ramble. He means without answering the question.
And now another interruption.
You have to.
The thing is,
let me. Oh, good. So Destiny, let's just take a breather, please. Go ahead, Nick. Thanks, Destiny.
Thank you. So the thing is, I mean, I think the big point is I'm banned for 7 years from some platforms, banned from Twitter for 3. I get platformed on here. Mario, you, before you even put out the tweet, say, well, just on the record, I don't agree with most of what he says. We have to bring in 4 left-wing Zionist Jews on the space, and that's not good enough. Then we got to bring in Destiny, who for years has been saying, for whatever stupid reason he can say, well, I'm not going to stream with him, but he is going to show up on this one when it's a big platform. And that just goes to show the disadvantage that people like myself have. You know, Destiny is on YouTube, he's on Reddit, he's on Discord, he's on Twitter. Despite saying equally awful things, jokes or not, he's engaged in mass reporting like anybody has, whether it's a year ago or 7 years ago. But a person like me, I've been banned from everything. I've been lied about by everybody, lied about by the ADL, SPLC. They've never written anything about Destiny. There's no pressure to get him banned from anything. I get restored. It's not 48 hours. I get invited onto a space where everybody practically has to sign a pledge that says, I'm not with this guy. And we got to bring in 4 other people who do most of the talking from the left to defend the State Department and the regime.
You had Andrew Tate
and now I'm going to
and
be
Alex
interrupted
Jones
here.
in
Now I'm
here
going
on
to be
your
interrupted
side.
Yeah, Brian, I'll let you respond right after, Nick. So I think Brian's point, Nick. Brian's point was, Nick, that you had a lot of. You had Alex Jones, you had Andrew Tate, you had Sneako, you had others that were supporting your stance. So I think we tried our best to keep it balanced, but I do have to agree with you. Like, I'll be honest, I faced the most pressure bringing you on stage, more than anyone else except probably Prime Minister Imran Khan, Pakistan, and Bolsonaro.
A very clear double standard earlier when you introduced Destiny. He openly says that he hates Islam and he's Islamophobic, and nobody pushes back. There's not going to be any articles. Nobody's going to write a bill to go and say anything about Islamophobia. But then Nick says his points, that he believes that race is real and he thinks that America's a Christian country. And then somehow that's the most banned position. That's the one that's going to get articles written about it. When Myron comes on stream and he makes jokes about, you know, they make Nazi jokes, stuff like this, they automatically try to censor you and say that you believe in this stuff. And they come on here, Destiny says that you must believe in, there must be some sort of secret motive that you have, some secret hatred. But no, these people just, we like to make jokes. We like to have humor. Destiny openly says he hates Islam, and guess what's going to happen? Nothing. He's not.
It's literally it's literally not jokes. 2, I've been banned from Twitter more than any of you motherfuckers. I can't believe you guys are crying on here about Twitter bans. I'm pretty sure I've been banned from Twitter. I've been banned from Twitter. Yeah, that's great. I've got some. I'm banned from Twitch. Right, and I was banned from Twitter for longer than you and fucking Fuentes over here combined. And you guys lie about why you get banned from your platforms anyway. Just like Nick Fuentes won't answer why he's on my blacklist. He also lies about why he got no blacklist.
Let's move away. Because
he was fighting with a flight attendant.
Let's move away from these points. Go ahead, Sneako. Go ahead.
One more point is that Nick's right. I mean, I hosted a bunch of panels back in 2022 when I first learned about Nick and his movement about America First. And the reason they try to silence him so much is because his position ultimately is that we should stop funding Israel. It's that simple. That's why he's so censored, is because he points out a very specific flaw that American politicians have, is that they all have to have an undying allegiance to Israel, and we don't even know why they're our greatest ally. People defend this country so much and they don't even know where it is on a map. The fact that he calls us out so much, that's what bothers him. And so they try to blacklist him, they try to censor him nonstop. But every time he gets a new angle of popularity, when people start to admit that his talking points have been correct for so long, they immediately hijack the stream. They'll come in there when he comes on Fresh and Fit, Destiny has to debate him. When I go debate XQC, Destiny has to jump in. When Nick gets reinstated on Twitter for the first day and surpasses him in followers in 24 hours, who needs to come in? Can any of you even remember what all the yapping from 30 minutes was about the Wikipedia articles? I can't.
Listen, we all know that you have trouble paying attention. That's why you haven't learned anything about the religion you're drifting in for the past year. But to be clear, Mario invited me. He literally DM'd me like 2 hours ago. So Mario is the Jew in this circumstance. Just to be clear,
you can blame me.
Controlled, by the way.
I'll take the blame. But Keith, I want to ask you a question. You and Brian, then we'll go to Nick for that same question. Why, Keith, in your opinion, was Nick banned from Twitter and all other social media companies? Keith, Brian, and then obviously Nick. You're probably best to answer that question.
Well, it's obviously ideological censorship. I mean, getting back to what I was saying earlier, you know, Destiny can make these pro-genocide statements. Hassan can endorse violence. Nothing happens. They stay up on YouTube. There isn't an SPLC hit piece. There are teams employed by organizations like the ADL that sit and watch every minute of Nick's content. And he does 5 shows a week. So it's like, you know, 10 to 15 hours of content. And they clip out 1 or 2 minutes, often joking clips, and then they shop that around, and that's really the only way he's allowed on these major platforms. You know, Nick, I was with him a few days ago. He was telling me about the extent of the censorship after January 6th, and really, you know, I think it's a watershed him being allowed back on, because people get censored, and we all know how bad the censorship has been the last year. But there was a point where, you know, you get censored on a platform, you move to another platform, maybe that one bans you. But in Nick's case, I think he's one of the few people where it was an individual censor. You know, it was an unpersoning across platforms, where even people that were posting his clips would get censored. If you search for him on YouTube, it was only very curated results from organizations like the SPLC. And like, it's easy to come on and take this kind of, like I said, this sort of naive pluralist attitude that it's just a free market and these companies just don't like these individual beliefs. But at the end of the day, you know, the companies aren't monitoring these individual streamers, these individual personalities. These boycotts are targeted and led by organizations like the ADL that forced Facebook to ban Holocaust denial, forced Facebook to ban white nationalism, launched a huge advertiser boycott on Twitter. And, you know, this isn't just some kind of organic thing where these organizations represent like a plurality of interests. It's oftentimes the same oligarchs funding these people that are funding the media. Jonathan Greenblatt was in the Obama administration. These organizations are really an extension of the regime. And to take this kind of naive attitude that this is just sort of civil society functioning as it does, and it's you know, free market making decisions about who to sponsor, it's just totally naive. So that's why I think it's such a That's why I think it's a watershed moment that Nick is back on, because I think he has become the litmus test as someone who is, you know, the most attacked by these organizations, the most lied about. And he's really the only one that's come out the other side of censorship bigger than before. You know, individuals like Alex Jones have been heavily censored, Andrew Tate, but Nick has really come back bigger than 3-4 years ago. And it's at the point where, despite all the censorship, I think everyone has to recognize he's a part of the public conversation. You know, Piers Morgan regularly name drops him. People mention his meeting with Trump. So, you know, Elon here is making, I think,
So let me just, based on what you said, because I think you made a very important point here. And Nick, let me ask you a question based on what Keith said. Obviously, as a side note about Al Ahli Baptist Hospital, we know Israel did it, and we know Al Shifa didn't have those. Didn't
Just
have
2
those.
seconds, silly. Sorry,
Just,
it's silly.
let me ask
hold
Nick
on,
a question.
silly.
Second.
Silly. Just something came up. Just 2 seconds. You remember how I can't remember who it was. The joke that Nick made earlier. The quote: "You're right. We can't compare loving Hitler to loving Destiny. Destiny is far worse." We just saw a prominent account snip that and say Nick Fuentes to Myron, and then they put that quote there. Without putting out the full context that it's a joke. I think it's a perfect. I think so. I think so. I just want to make it clear. Yeah, I just want to make it clear. This is I think it's a bad joke. I think Nick even thinks it's a bad joke. He might disagree. He might think it's a good joke. I think it's a bad joke, but it's a joke nonetheless, whether it's good or bad. I think anyone that snips it, anyone on Twitter that takes that snippet and posts it pretending it's not a joke, is participating in censorship, or at least tarnishing one's image.
Right, Mario? Because he's literally saying, you guys are taking my jokes out of context and making it seem like these are my ideological positions, and then we have that happen in real time. So if anything, it just proves his point even more.
Mario, you see what didn't go viral? Someone saying, "I hate Islam with every fiber of my body." Nobody clips that, and it does not go viral anywhere. You see the clear hypocrisy, the clear double standard.
Here's the thing. This is perfectly encapsulates what happens with Nick, right? Nick gets censored, and anyone that works with him gets censored as a byproduct of platforming him. That's why most people are pussies and don't platform Nick, because they're scared of getting something like that just happen to them. This literally is quintessentially proves what we've been talking about.
But Nick, can I say
to a degree, and they censor anyone that platforms him, and they try to say.
Sorry, I can't hear Suleiman right now.
No, Myron is speaking. But Nick, can I just say, sorry, Sully, I know I took the mic from you. I'm going to give it back to you. But Nick, can I just kind of put it on you? Are you, when you make jokes like this, are you really asking for it?
No. I think that's totally ridiculous. I think that, this is like the person that gets abused by the battered wife. Well, what did you say? Or the rape victim. I'm raped. I've been raped. No, I'm kidding. So that's an edgy joke. But it really is. Do we have a free society or don't we? Do we all have the same rights? Can we all make jokes? Can we all use rhetoric? Can we all speak freely? I haven't said a joke that's more offensive than, you know, for example, some people like Lil Nas X dancing on Jesus. If Lil Nas X got killed by like a bunch of Christians because they don't like the blasphemy, would you look at that guy and say, well, he had it coming, you know, that he did that? I mean, or any
Nick,
other
how many people do you
example
think died in
other
how many
people
Jews
being
died in the
offended?
Holocaust?
Okay, am I just going to be interrupted the whole
bro,
time
you
by this
gamble.
pissant who
You
said he's going
literally
to
yapped more
blacklist
than anyone
me
else
and
here.
doesn't want to stream
How
my
many
video?
people?
Mario,
Guys, 2 seconds. So, Nick, I'll let you finish your point. So then I'll give you the mic because I know I took it from you. Destiny, I appreciate coming on stage and creating this debate, but we'll just take a bit of a break. Nick, I'll let you finish your point. We'll go to Sully, and Destiny will go back to you in a bit.
So no, I think that's totally ridiculous. And I think that, and the other thing is, it's dishonest. And that's to Keith's point and Sneako's point, is everybody can watch my stream and discern when I'm joking and when I'm not. Even you did. You who disagree with me on most things can acknowledge that my joke about Destiny being worse than Hitler is clearly a joke. Not for people that clip it and then want to use that to deplatform me. That's precisely what happened the first time. I go on a space, I say something, they clip it, they use it. And as Sneako said, people like Destiny or Hassan can go on other streams and they can say outrageous things. There's no clips, there's no SPLC researcher, there's no censorship. So it's really a question of, if you're right wing, are you so handicapped that, I mean, it's just like Harrison Bergeron. You can't say anything, you're constantly interrupted, constantly the language is policed and so on. So no, I mean, I have an edgy sense of humor. And, you know, more to it, a lot of people say I'm funnier than comedians. I don't know if I agree with that, but, you know, the point is we live in this climate where that is a substantial thing that's been removed from society. People can't be funny because they can't take risks. People that have more clout or people that are more mainstream than me, people like Shane Gillis as a good example. One of the funniest people around, recognized at this point, gets removed from the conversation because he's got the wrong politics or made the wrong type of a joke. So this, you know, aren't you asking for it, is like an insane totalitarian mindset, in my opinion. And it'd be one thing if I was one of these guys like the Blood Tribe that you see at these protests where they got a vein bulging out of their head and they're screaming, you know, obscenities and racial slurs and, you know, and that, you know, that might be one thing. I don't know, you know, in terms of free speech, but I could understand why that people might be put off by that. But obvious jokes about things where everybody's laughing, or even if I'm just laughing, I think we can recognize that's part of the conversation. The bigger picture is who is behind the censorship. It's not that people, I didn't get kicked off Twitter because there was a grassroots, organic mass support because they didn't like my jokes or they didn't find it humorous. I got banned from Twitter because there are groups, as Keith said, that since the time I was 18 years old have effectively been spying on me, watching everything, paid for it with the stated intention. I mean, that's their goal of getting me censored because of the political things that I say. And you know that that's the case. You know, as Keith said, you know that you can't believe the alibi or the cover story because of the inconsistency. They don't do this to left-wing people. They don't enforce it against left-wing people because it's a matter of ideological censorship. If it was about the thing in itself, Hassan would be banned for posting a bomb schematic, obviously. And there are numerous other examples. Even regular conservatives can point this out. So
I mean, nobody denies
everything. It's
double
political.
standard.
Nick, just a quick question. Nick, just a quick question, right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you've explained from a social media perspective, right? And even people have mentioned about this, your joke being taken out of context and clipped. What about from the mainstream media perspective and organizations such as ADL? If those organizations are up in arms about what they believe is hate speech, why is it, for example, they've come after you, they've made hit pieces against you, the ADL have come after you, but like, for example, not to mention Destiny again, but his extreme Islamophobia has been left unanswered. So is it, and does that then not, that's the first part, and the second part of the question, does that then not add more merit to your argument that there are certain people who are having control of the media, having control of the narrative?
100%. And I'll even match you another example. Ben Shapiro, who's, I think, far more famous than almost anyone here, except for probably Andrew Tate. Ben Shapiro, 20 years ago, was writing that we should, or rather Israel should ethnically cleanse Palestine. He wrote actually several articles saying transfer is not a dirty word and these people hate us and we got to ethnically cleanse them. Now, whenever you read an article about Ben Shapiro, you don't read Ben Shapiro, who 20 years ago in a town hall article wrote in favor of ethnic cleansing. That's not part of the conversation, but it is the case with me. It is the case with Keith. It is the case, presumably, if other people on the space step out of bounds, they'll say, you know, Mario and Suleiman, who hosted the white nationals, Nick Fuentes. That proves that it is ideological and it is about power. And I'll say the Ben Shapiro example is connected to Destiny. You may have noticed that lately Destiny has been getting bigger platforms. He was on a debate with Ben Shapiro, with Lex Fridman, with Jordan Peterson. And, you know, this is a theory, so not a fact, but a theory. I think that one of the reasons they're willing to overlook some of the disturbing things about his life or disturbing things that he said, but not with me, is because Destiny is one of the few pro-Israel leftists. So Jordan Peterson recently, who's at Daily Wire, Shapiro's company, somebody said, when will you talk to Nick Fuentes? Peterson said, when hell freezes over. Okay, and I'm a Catholic right-wing guy. I mean, obviously far right, obviously not mainstream right. But when hell freezes over, that's when he'll sit with me or converse with me. And presumably in an extremely hostile way, if it ever happened. When Destiny, who lives a completely, and I don't say this as a personal attack, but lives a not conservative lifestyle, to put it respectfully, with some decorum, okay, somebody who really is a fundamental liberal on the issue of transsexuals or on climate or other things, well, Jordan Peterson smiles and sits with him in a friendly manner, and it's an intense debate, but in a very friendly way. Why is it that even conservatives will platform liberals, communists, in some cases Satanists, porn stars? Trent Horn sat down with porn stars and whatever. He's a Catholic apologist. He's also Jewish. They'll sit down with porn stars. Those people are not offensive enough to a conservative to refuse their company. But I am, because I made a joke or I said something, even I'll grant you, let's say something that is completely heterodox in the conservative political space. That tells you what's going on. And as I said earlier, the contours of what is called political correctness, what explains these things, is the positions that people take on certain issues. Dave Rubin, and his last example I'll give, the last example is Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin built it, and we all recognize, built his brand saying, I'm a liberal, and I may not agree with you, but at least we can have a conversation. You know, Rubin Report, back in 2016, he was debating Shapiro and Milo and Peterson. He really put all these people on. He's part of the intellectual dork web. Dave Rubin, he literally published a book. Hey, don't burn this book. You might disagree with my book, but don't burn it. But when people go and criticize Israel, then Dave Rubin blocks you on Twitter, attacks you on Twitter, and calls your boss and tries to get you fired. You know, all of a sudden, he wants to burn the books. Now we can't have a conversation. There are some things that we can't talk about.
Why isn't Hassan banned? Hassan is wait,
friends,
why isn't Hassan banned? He's the largest political streamer on Twitch and has huge platforms on other huge things on other platforms. Why isn't Hassan banned, who is insanely anti-Israel?
Hassan isn't platformed by Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson.
He's platformed by Twitch, which is represented by Amazon, which is controlled. It's got to be the most Jew-controlled fucking organization in the world. Why doesn't Hassan get banned? He's had ADL.
I'm not
things
talking about platforms.
You said that if you don't represent, so you don't think the ADL or any of the platform bans have to do with not towing the Israeli line?
Try getting it out. I'm talking specifically about Shapiro and Peterson.
Yeah, because you're talking specifically about it now because this contradicts your point. Yeah, you're yapping for 3 minutes. You won't own any point.
After you held the floor for an hour.
I haven't held the floor for anything. You interrupted me so many times. You're so.
What is the point?
Oh my god.
Nick, I'm gonna George. You've heard Nick's joke earlier, and I saw one of your comments. You weren't too happy with it. Do you think jokes like this? Do you think anything that Nick said so far should be censored? I know you disagree with a lot of it, but do you think it should be censored, George? Mr. Santos.
I don't think he's added.
Well, look, I'm no fan of Nick Fuentes.
Oh, so why isn't Hassan banned for being anti-Israel?
Hold on, Desi, hold on, please. Go ahead, Mr. Santos. Go ahead.
So Desi, real quick. I'm
still a listener.
First of all,
the reason is because he's still alive.
No, sorry, Sneako. Yeah, I think there's a glitch. You can't hear George Santos speaking right now. Yeah, Sneako. So George Santos speaking.
I'll drop and come back up.
No, not you, George. I'll drop Sneako and bring him back up. All good, George. The glitch was Sneako. Go ahead, George. Sneako, I'll drop you and bring you back up.
So very simple. To answer your question is, I don't agree with anything Nick Fuentes says. I used to think he was, harmless, and now he's out there, whatever. But I don't think he should be banned. But I don't think we should give him oxygen because he says a lot of hateful things.
Is someone talking? I can't hear.
Yeah, it's me. Let me.
Okay, George, I think you're the issue, but it's actually, yeah. I'll drop you and bring you back up. But it's actually, Brian, I'm going to give you the mic. You'll probably make a similar point to George, hopefully, and I'll bring George back up.
Yeah, so like I've heard some people talk, and I think Sneako might have said something that like Nick's been banned on all these platforms because he's been anti-Israel or he has spoken out against Israel. But I feel that there's a lot of minimizing of what Nick has said in the past, and he claims that it's a joke. You say like, oh, you joke around a lot, but like, were you joking when you said that you loved Hitler, or when you said that Jews have no place in Western civilization, or when you called for the Aryan race to go to victory? Like, were they all jokes?
Total Aryan victory, yeah, that's a joke. And loving Hitler, I do love Hitler in a Christian way. I love everybody.
Let's
As I
go.
said, I love you.
You don't see why that
I
might
love
be a
Destiny.
problem. You don't see why that might be a problem, and that might be a little bit different.
Well,
than some
but tell
things that
me
these other
why. But
people have
tell me
said.
why. Why is that a problematic statement to love?
Would you love?
Am
Would
I
you?
obligated to hate people?
So would you say? So Nick, would you hate? Is there anyone on this planet that you would hate? Just first question. I know it's very broad.
No,
nobody at all.
As
Okay.
Christians, we have to love. Well, and this is the purpose of saying. And this is the thing I think that's getting lost. The purpose of saying something outrageous like that. People say, "Why would you say something like that?" It is to elicit a conversation like this. It is for people to say and question their assumptions. You know, why is it the case that we have to hate a person? Why? Who can we hate? Who can we love? And who says? And why?
Wait, Nick,
well,
Nick.
wait. So hang on. Me as a Christian, when you say things like, well, you know, you said Jews have no place in Western civilization. I don't know what that specific quote is, but what I am saying is that Jews are not part of the same civilization in the sense that for thousands of years, they were segregated from Christians.
Do you think Muslims are part of the same civilization? Should Muslims be allowed to run for office?
Hold on, Desi. Let me go. Yes, so Desi. Just let me get.
Answer a single question.
Yeah. Let me. Desi. I will go back to you. I promise. Nick, I want to back and forth between you and Brian on Brian's particular point before going to Mr. Santos again. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, me too. And I'll make it brief, but. You know, a statement like that is Jews are different than Christians, and they have lived in segregation or in conflict or in other ways with each other because they're not Christian. It is a Christian value that we say we love everybody. We love even our enemies. We love everybody. Jewish people say sometimes I think there was an article written in First Things recently by some Zionist, and they said, actually, there's a virtue in hatred. There's a virtue in hating the Palestinians or hating Hamas and things like that. And so like that does reflect a fundamental difference of values. And when I say, and Christians believe that evil is the Antichrist, the essence of good and God and love is selflessness. The opposite of that is selfishness, pride. So our adversary is not actually Hitler, it's the devil. It's the Antichrist. And the model of good is God. It seems like there's this parallel, separate moral system that's been created where in some people's minds, Hitler is the devil, and I guess Israel is the angel or something like that. Seems to be the people that are the most evil are the ones that are the most like Hitler, and the goodest people, the best people, the most good, well, they're the ones that are the least racist, the least this. I think that's like an obfuscation. I think that obfuscates the fundamental moral equation for Christians. So when I say, and when me and Ye said that.
I do want to go to just let me get Brian to push back. So let me
go ahead. Right? It's going to be a one-word answer. Based on what you said, because you're basically applying Christian ethics. But let's say hypothetically someone was to kill your family member, would you apply the same standard that you would dislike the person but still love them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're supposed to love everybody. That's why that priest in Australia who got stabbed immediately prayed for the attacker. So that is really the fundamental difference.
And that's the difference. That's the reason that Hassanabi gets to go on the mainstream platforms is because he doesn't have that sort of basis of ideology. When you come from the atheist point of view, they don't see you as a threat. Nick coming on here and saying that America should hold Christian values, that's the real threat to the Judeo-Christian system. Mario, there's a reason why Elon Musk is not, I mean, I love Elon Musk for reinstating me. The reason that he's not in this space right now is because we're talking about the Israel issue, the one issue that scares them the most. They're not supposed to speak about this. Look, the biggest lobby in America is not funded by the Chi-Coms or the globalists. The biggest lobby in America, AIPAC, 98% of their politicians are funded by Israel. This is the main issue. This is what it always leads back to. And the biggest threat is having strong people like the Groypers that believe in God.
And also, I want to add this as well. Not only do they stifle off Nick's influence, but anyone that works
Groyper.
with
Are we
him.
going to get George Santos in here?
Yeah. So let me get Brian.
Quick point. I just want
quick,
to make
please, Myron. I want to go to Brian, then Mr.
Yeah.
Santos.
I'm going to be very quick here. The thing I want to mention is that not only do they stifle Nick's influence, but they go ahead and try to stifle anyone that platforms him that isn't diametrically opposed.
No, Myron is speaking. Yeah, Myron, you've got the glitch. I'll bring you down and back up, and no one can hear you on stage. You go ahead, Brian, and then we'll go to Mr. Santos.
I just feel that you're trying to whitewash, no pun intended, like some of the things you've said in the past. So I'll ask you flat out. I'm Jewish. I've had family members fight in World War II, in Vietnam. Do I belong in Western civilization?
I think that Jewish civilization is different than Christian civilization. I mean,
but do I belong in the United States? Do I belong in Western civilization as a Jew?
I mean, if I were in charge, I wouldn't deport you or something like that. I don't, those are subjective questions.
But you think I should have no power in this country?
I think you shouldn't be able to be the president. Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Because I'll tell you exactly why. One, you're not a Christian. And I think that any Christian cannot just throw it up and say, we're going to let the president. Fathers. Okay, well, first of all, that's not true. Okay, that's based on a myth. No. They were Christian, and it was a Christian people. And the framers, if you read in the Federalist Papers, it says that this is for one people of one faith on one land. John Jay, Federalist number 2. Look it up. It's in there. The framers all believe this. Regardless,
show me where they say it's a Christian country.
But leaving that aside,
show me where they say it's a Christian country. Does it actually say that somewhere in the Constitution?
I just cited it. John Jay, Federalist number 2. John Jay, the Federalist Papers were written by the framers, and that was the basis of the Constitution.
That nobody that's not Christian should have no vote.
It didn't say that. No, it didn't say that explicitly. But it said that this is a country.
What are you basing?
Well, and also, okay, are you going to interrupt me, or do you want me to make my point?
I'm just trying to get to your thought process.
Okay. Well, regardless, even if the founding fathers were not Christian, that doesn't matter to me. Okay. The founding fathers are not the authority. God is the authority. And no Christian can say that we're going to let the country be run by whoever gets elected. Like, let's say atheists get elected, or let's say Muslims get elected, or let's say Satanists get elected. A Christian cannot say, well, the founding fathers said, or, well, so-and-so said that the people decided that we must live under some kind of regime. No, we believe that actually society should be receiving instruction from the church, that only moral people can lead, and that if you have people in charge that do not believe in God and don't actually follow God's laws, then you're going to have a country that's totally immoral or amoral and therefore totally sinful and offensive to God. I don't know how anyone could be a Christian and not
wait, make him answer the question of would you apply the same restrictions to Muslims as you would to Jews?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. I literally just said it. You weren't listening very good. I said we shouldn't let a Muslim be president.
Yeah, you said president. So what about for Congress? What about for mayors?
Yeah, for Congress too. I said it earlier.
So no federal offices,
judges,
no state offices for
just Christians.
No Muslims as well. Okay.
Just Christians.
Good.
Yeah. Okay.
So if I said that the final authority belongs to Big Bird, why should my thoughts on that be weighed less than yours? Like, should we just look to Big Bird and ask Big Bird what the country should be run by?
Well, then you get into the subjectivity of morality. I mean, you could apply the same question about the country. It's like, would you be okay with some kind of Satanist being in control of the country? I mean, do you think that's okay?
Do I think it's okay? I don't think that any religious
should that be allowed to happen?
I don't think any religious text should be running the country. I think that the Constitution should determine how the country is run, not how one person thinks a God wants the country to be run.
Okay, but all laws, but this is a question of morality. All laws are based on morals. Saying that it's illegal to kill is based on morals. Saying it's legal to steal is based on morals. Saying that everyone should be equal, that's a moral statement. What if somebody gets elected that doesn't believe that everybody's created equal? And then they pass a law that creates an apartheid regime.
Morals aren't based on religion,
though.
Morals aren't based on religion.
Yeah, they are.
No, they're not. I'm not religious. I have morals.
They necessarily have to be.
If we say they necessarily are, why do we cite John Jay?
I have morals.
Wait, why do we cite the Federalist Papers? Why do we cite the Founding Fathers? If you want America to be a Christian nation, That none of that is found anywhere in the Constitution.
I'm
There's
not
no
citing them.
requirement.
I'm not
Okay,
citing them.
you literally cited John Jay in Federalist Papers number 2, where, by the way,
he said the founders weren't Christian.
That's
I
yes,
said
because
the
they
founders
weren't
were
Christian, but more importantly, they didn't
They were
enshrine
Christian.
Christianity in any part of our Constitution.
You're totally confused.
Why?
First of
I'm
all,
not
you're
confused at all.
interrupting. Second of
I'm
all,
not
you're
confused at all.
totally confused.
Yes,
you are.
You
It's two different
acknowledge that
claims.
your point of view is fundamentally anti-American, from the founding fathers, the framers, the law.
100%. Americanism is a heresy in the Catholic Church. You'd know that if you knew fucking anything.
Okay,
Like,
so
you get
then
all
why
your
the
information
fuck are
from
you even in
Wikipedia
this country? Why
articles.
not go fucking live in Rome, or go fucking live in the Catholic fucking Vatican, or go live in fucking prehistoric wherever the fuck? Why be in the United States and try to change this into some theocratic regime when that's not fundamentally what the country is about?
We want to make it better. We want to improve
You
it.
don't want to
and
make it better.
fulfill
You
its
want to
destiny.
destroy the country. Like, you understand. The funny thing is, you are like as bad
You're literally
or
a
worse
cunt.
than the
You're
Jewish
literally a
invaders
cunt,
that you
twice divorced,
accuse of
abandoned your
trying
kid,
to destroy
but
the
I'm
country.
destroying the
You are
country.
overtly saying that you want to run it as a theocratic regime, that you want religion and God to be the number one thing we answer to, and not the Constitution. Yeah, so you're worse than any Jew you accuse of trying to frame their law or their allegiance or whatever. You want to be loyal to the Vatican or whatever the fuck, and you say they want to be loyal to fucking Israel. At least Israel is real. Like, what the fuck is the point of trying to say that the United States should be some theocratic regime and then act like you're better than any other group of people trying to change the country?
Because one is right and one is not right. Your whole religion is basically...
fuck me. I didn't.
Okay,
how did I not know
answer
that?
this, or is it
One
just
religion
gonna
is
be more
right
of
and the other
this
is wrong. You're the
humanity
first
from
one in
Destiny?
history to think of that one, Nick Fuentes.
That's true.
Good one,
That's
Chief.
true. But that is the
Good
difference.
one,
You are
Chief.
liberal.
Wait.
You
What
have
about
a
all the dick
liberal
sucks in
morality,
here?
and
Well,
I
hold
have
on.
a Catholic
Where's
morality. That's
Sneako
the
and Myron?
fundamental
How do you guys
difference.
feel about the fact that Nick would see it so that you guys could never hold
Yes.
public
Now
office?
bring in the
What
other.
is
You guys
even the
could
purpose of
never
Destiny
hold
in this
public
place at
office
this point,
in
honestly?
Nick's America.
Let me
Nico stood up on
yes,
stage. He supported him. Nico said, "Yeah,
George. George. I know you were trying to speak earlier. I appreciate you waiting. I'll give you the mic. I think we got to the end of the back and forth.
Do you want us to answer that question?
I'm gonna skip the question just for now. We can get back to it in a bit. George, go ahead.
All right, no, thank you. Look, the debate on the topic of Nick Fuentes being silenced, I disagree. I don't agree in curbing anybody's speech. Does that necessarily mean we should all?
Oh shit. This again, I promise you that I'll bring you down and back up. I will make sure you speak immediately right after. And just while I'm doing that, just quickly, Nick, how long have you and Destiny known each other? Because you guys seem like you're
Try the softball questions, bro. He's got his own stream to be softball.
Nah, just so
Make the Muslims in the call answer. Suleiman, Sneako, and Myron. Nick said he would never allow any Muslim in this country to hold public office. You're chill with that? You like that version
it's
of
much better
America?
than and like acting like we're even a majority in America is ridiculous. There's 3 million Muslims here. It makes more sense, and our ideologies align more than the alternative. I'd much rather have a Christian country than an atheist country. Yeah, if they're gonna have strong Christians that can sort everything to the Bible, I think that makes sense. That's what the whole point of Ye 24 was. Let's rewrite a lot of these things. Let's make sure that all the laws that we push forward go right back to the Bible. I think that makes
You'd rather live in a Christian theocracy where Muslims aren't even allowed to hold office than you would in a secular democracy where Muslims can hold office.
Why are we subjected to this interrogation? Do you understand how it goes from he's not
I know you're mad because you just want to fucking yap and preach. No, you're not. The question wasn't even directed to you.
Perfect timing. George, you joined back at a perfect time. Let's see. Hopefully, I wouldn't open it.
Look, Nick is a friend of mine. Obviously, we disagree on this issue. You can disagree with people on specific issues. That's one of the issues that we disagree on. Go ahead, Mario.
Yeah, I was just going to go to George. George, hopefully Nick could hear you this time around.
Myron, do I need to let him come back? Because he still looks like a listener to me.
No, guys. Yeah, Myron, just 2 seconds. Mr. Santos, I hope Nick can hear you this time around. Go ahead, sir.
Can Nick hear me? Can somebody tell Nick, can you hear him?
No, I think no one can hear him. I can't hear him. Yeah, I can't hear him either. Sully, can you hear him?
I can hear him. I can hear him.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, George. I'll let you ask your. Yeah, I'll let you make your comments, and hopefully the audience can hear you, and then we could tell Nick what he said. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the statement. I'm going to make a statement and a question. The statement is: should Nick Fuentes be censored? No, I don't think anybody should be censored. I think ugly speech is ugly, and the person who makes it should wear it. I don't care. But just based on what I've heard over the last couple of minutes here of Nick Fuentes, I mean, I can find that he has a following because every single thing he says is seething in hate. It's hateful. He's Islamophobic. He's anti-Semitic. Every single aspect of this individual is built on hate. And what drives me absolutely bonkers is the fact that he calls himself a white nationalist, but the guy's Hispanic. That's quite the clash of of identity he has there, but which is fine. Who cares? That's his prerogative. But what I find hard to understand is the people who listen to the things he's saying and that they conform and agree. I mean, I've seen what the Groypers look like. They come in all shades and colors and religions. The fact that they can make amends with Nick Fuentes as their quote unquote leader, whether it's, you know, one of his generals being in prison being subject to going to prison for 5 years for child pornography, whether it's him having porn on his computer and being exposed for it, but then denying it, and not alone just
That was
porn, but gay
fake.
porn.
That was proven
Yo,
fake.
Mario, why you bring
I
this
don't
guy
care.
up here? Who is this guy?
I can't
don't
even
care.
hear what's being
Well,
said.
Sneako,
He's bringing up the porn on the
you,
phone thing. That's
unlike
like
you want to
proven
acknowledge or
fake.
not, I'm somebody who at least knows how to get elected. How about that?
I
You're
can't
never
hear
going to
it,
get elected.
so.
Nick's never going to get elected. You're never really going to be leaders of change or even representatives of any thought of your twisted, sick mentality. The fact that I'm sitting on the stage and I actually have to agree predominantly with Destiny and the Krasensteins, who are is just to show you how Nick Fuentes is a seething, hateful person. I mean, and that's just my opinion. Now, Sneako, if you want to shill for him, that's on you. And Keith, if you want to shill for him, that's on you. But all you need to do is go on the purple pill and see exactly the nasty, vitriolic hate that Nick Fuentes and his followers drive to the conversation. I'm gay. I'm not ashamed of it. But to them, I'm not human. I'm subhuman in their world.
Don't worry, as long as Fuentes is in here, you're in good company.
Well, you're
Can I
coming
make a
into the
comment on that?
space. You're
Can I
coming
make a
into the
comment on
space
that to George?
lying.
Can I make a comment on that, please? Hey, George, look, man.
I can't even hear what's being said, so I don't
Can
think
you
this
hear
is
Myron?
fair.
So Nick,
Yes, again, Nick,
let me tell him what he said, because he needs to respond, because there's a lot of like defamatory statements.
Sully, since Nicholas can't hear, should we bring him down and back up?
No, it's only George that he cannot hear. I think a couple of
It's
other
only
speakers cannot
George?
hear him. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Suleiman.
Yeah, so I mean, he's made a number of accusations against you. He's saying that you are Islamophobic because you of your position. He also said you're anti-Semitic and your entire ideology is based on hate. He also made an accusation that you're friends with somebody who's been in prison for 5 years or something. And also he said something about you having child pornography on your computer.
Okay, well, I mean, he's Jewish, homosexual, drag queen, so I mean, clearly there's a little ideological bias. As for pornography,
2 seconds, Nick. Sorry, 2 seconds, Nick. What correction did you want to make, George? And then we'll go to Nick.
The correction was, I didn't say child pornography. I said gay porn on his computer.
Oh, okay, gay. So Nick, it was not child pornography. Big difference. Yeah, and Nick, it was gay porn, not child pornography.
He's thinking of Abby Alexander, the guy that Nick Fuentes defends all the time.
Oh, okay. Ali Alexander. Yeah, that's go ahead, Nick.
Well, it's funny. I mean, the old Ali thing was completely debunked. Milo came out and said, "Oh, there's all this evidence," and it never came out. There was one thing where I guess he sexted some gay guy who apparently, I mean, at first it looked credible. And then this guy turned out to be following and commenting on like 100 other gay people stuff during that period. So that whole thing got completely debunked. As for my philosophy being built on hatred and Islamophobia and whatever, these are meaningless words. I'm a Catholic. If you're Catholic, you believe that Jesus is God. You believe in the authority of the Catholic Church. And we can't live in a society that is completely separate from that. There's like this myth that Christians must be indifferent to their own religion and their own church. And, and I said to Destiny, he said, "Oh, well, you're the first person to say my religion is right and others are wrong." It's like, well, yeah, that's kind of the essence of religion, is that there are positive claims. They contradict other people's claims about the nature of God and all that. And yes, those ideas have consequences. If you believe Jesus is God and the Catholic Church has authority, you need to live in a society that's informed by that. And so, on the other hand, liberals believe in pluralism. Liberals who don't believe in God, or they have certain religious beliefs, they think that we have to defer all these questions or avoid all these questions. And they believe in the state that's like an umpire, and they're kind of letting people do whatever it is they want. But we're seeing the problems with that worldview, where a lot of different people are living here and they have mutually exclusive moral beliefs. And that becomes a very big problem. That's as evidenced by the trans issue or the gay issue or feminism or mass immigration of people from foreign religions. So, I mean, but this is really just low IQ stuff. You're an anti-Semitic Islamophobe. I mean, what do these things even mean? I mean, specifically on anti-Semitism, that is the essence of a debate now about this recent law where we're looking to the IHRA for the definition, and it says that if you believe Jews are loyal to Israel, you're anti-Semitic. It's like, okay, well, you know, Jews, some of them are loyal to Israel, believe it or not. I know that's crazy. Under that definition, you'd be an anti-Semite. If somebody said, do you hate Jews? I would say, no, I love Jews. I love everybody. If someone said, do you hate Muslims? I'd say, no, I love Muslims. I love everybody. And I have Muslim friends on this space. Suleiman, I count you as one of them. Myron, Sneako. I have Jewish friends like Laura Loomer and other people that are not public figures. So I mean, this is really just inane stuff. Surely we could have a higher IQ debate than you're a pornographer and you're a racist and you're an anti-Semite. This is just kind of like the same mob stupidity that you get from liberals in general. So I don't know why this guy was ever in Congress or Republican. I don't know, frankly, why he's on the space. You got two disgusting degenerates between Destiny and George Santos. You got a gay drag queen who got ran out of office.
All right, I gotta leave pretty soon. Can I do a final
with two
question
exploded
before I leave?
marriages and a couple of abandoned children. So I mean, these people, in my view, just do not have credibility on these subjects.
Nice.
So
Okay,
Destin, do you mind? I'm going to go to George for the two questions, then we'll go to yours right after.
Yeah,
I would prefer if we didn't, because I can't hear him, and that's not really fair.
I think it's working. I think it's working out. George, you want to try one more time?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me now, Nick?
I can't hear him.
You can?
No, I cannot.
Okay. You know what? I struggle to, Mario, I'm sorry, but I struggle to believe that.
It's not really appropriate for him to talk if I can't hear him.
No, okay, Nick. Is it okay if I repeat the question to you? Just going to do one question from George?
No, that's totally inappropriate. You can't have him accusing me of being a child pornographer, and I can't even hear what he's saying. I think that's inappropriate to begin with, and then for that to go on when I can't even...
Just ask him if he's gay or not. That's all I want to know.
Okay, so Suleiman, do you want to ask that question? It's a pretty simple question.
I mean, it's a bit of a dumb question, right?
Asked by a drag queen, by the way.
So it's a question about your sexuality, Nick. I'm not sure how it's relevant, but I'll ask it just because it was asked, and then we'll go to Destiny right after. Not sure if you want to answer that question, Nick.
Deny it, that's all.
What's the question? Well, I don't want to participate in this if people are going to be talking and I can't hear them.
Good. So it was a question. Other guys,
I've been waiting a while.
So I'm going to do this. Myron and then Destiny. So the question after you, Nick, if you want to answer it or not. So George Santos asked the question if you're gay or not, and then Myron wanted to speak, and then Destiny wanted to ask a final question. So after you want to answer the question,
isn't it? Like that's a ridiculous question. And to be honest, like George Santos, the guy who's basically conducted in more Islamophobia than anyone knows, ironic that he would say that. But anyway, go ahead, Nicholas.
I think Nick is pretty good at defending himself. Go ahead, Nick.
I have said it repeatedly, and I have no problem with hard questions, but I can't hear him, and these are not even legitimate questions. This is just asinine personal attacks. So I'm frankly, if this is how it's going to be, and I don't know if you're hearing me, but I'm not going to participate.
No, we can hear you.
You're bringing people up to call me a gay pornographer, and then I don't even hear the question. This is ridiculous. I'll suffer even a little bit of Destiny, hard questions, but I can't even hear the guy.
Yeah, let me go to Myron. Myron, you've been waiting for a while, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. See, here's the thing. This is what they do with Nick, right? So
I think, Myron. I think Nick just left. I'll let you mention your comments. I think it was a good debate, though. I think that last question was tough.
He'll be back.
But go ahead, Myron.
Yeah, so this is what they do, right? They discredit Nick by calling him a white supremacist, an extremist. He's built on hate, etc. But that's not true. 3 of the people here on this panel right now are Muslims, and he's friends with us. He's friends with Laura Loomer, who's Jewish and a Zionist. He has other Jewish friends. But they do this to disqualify his opinions and his views on things. Here's the reality. People cancel him because he talks about Jewish power in the United States and Jewish influence in American politics, which is absolutely true. That's why George Santos right now does not want to agree with him, because he understands the people that back him are Jewish lobbyists. That's the truth. America is run by AIPAC when it comes to political situations, and Nick has been critical of this for years, and they don't want him to be able to put that information out. Now, after October 7th, people are seeing the light of who really runs this fucking country from a political standpoint, and that is the truth. But they go ahead and try to say he's a white supremacist and make all these comments to disqualify the very valid points he makes.
Yeah, and I do, Sully, I'll let you ping Nick if you wanted to come in, but I think we went way over time with the space anyway. Destiny, I know you had a question for Nick, but you and him went back and forth a fair bit. I want to get, final thoughts from Keith. Keith, you've been doing a lot of spaces with Nick. Your final thoughts on Nick being reinstated, and I know you were speaking earlier when we interrupted.
Yeah, thanks. I know Nick dropped. I think he's actually doing a space on his own channel now if people want to continue it there.
Yeah, I think what
but
we'll do, Keith, we'll give you the final word, and then anyone that wants to
To be
continue
clear,
listening
Nick
to
is the
Nick, he's
only
got.
one here that said he wanted to block Muslims from running for office. So he's the most
Yeah, all good, all
Islamophobic
good.
here.
I think
yeah, I think
I do. I'll prevent. I'll avoid, guys. I'll avoid.
He also
Okay,
didn't
guys.
answer
So
any
what I'll do,
questions.
guys, what I'll do is, because Nick is not here, I just want to keep it fair. I think it was a good debate. Nick is doing his own space. I think he's been pretty cordial, giving us his time. As much as you love him or hate him, whoever you are in the audience, he did take pretty tough questions. He did speak to people who are not fans of him.
I do believe he was planning to come back. I think it was a glitch. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, all good. So he's doing his own space, I think. Keith said. So anyone that wants to continue listening to Nick,
he's coming back. He told me it's just. But if you're ending, it's fine. But he was planning to come back.
Oh, okay, if he wants to jump in, that's great. Keith, I'm not sure if he's doing his own space. Let me check his account. But Keith, I'll give you the mic again. If Nick jumps in, we can do a few more questions and then we'll wrap up the space. And give him a final word on his. I want to ask him, like, what is his plan with X? Is it going to be similar to when he was? Guys, if you can make sure you don't just bring in more. Actually, it's good to bring in Hassan. Actually, there he is. Nick is back. Nick, appreciate you coming back. Not sure if Sully, you brought Hassan. Did you want to take a question from Destiny? I think Destiny had a final question for you.
For me?
Nah, he just dropped out as well. I think it's glitching for everybody. Nick, I've got a question for you. What is your plan moving now? You've been censored on X a few times. You're censored on all other platforms. Honestly speaking, will you be more careful in what you say? Not based on your beliefs, but just to avoid getting censored again and surviving more than 24, 48 hours this time around?
No, I think that kind of defeats the whole purpose. And if I was able to survive without Twitter for a year, then, I would like to keep the platform and I'm going to try to remain on it, but I have to continue to convey the message, so I suppose I'll be a little bit careful in how I word it at times, but we have to recognize so that I'm going to be just like everybody else, kind of, dancing around the issues and things like that. Within reason, I'm not going to say things that would obviously get me banned, but we have to be very careful of this idea that we can be co-opted. If we allow tech companies or whoever's influencing them to dictate what we can and can't say, then, really, to the extent that we have free speech, it almost becomes irrelevant. So it's like you said earlier, I brought it on myself with the jokes and this and that. We got to look around at our society and say, what are the real problems? Who are the real bad guys in the situation? I don't think the real bad guys are white guys that don't want to be replaced. I don't think the real problem are people that recognize that Jews have influence in our society. I don't think the problem is people that make jokes. The problem, as Elon says, is people that want to destroy humanity. I think it's people that are betraying our country, people that are acting as foreign agents, people that are letting vagabonds and criminals and transients control the cities. I think it's people that want to send us to war against Russia and Iran and China. We got to get our priorities straight. So, we do live in a regulated media and it is totally contrived and in many cases outright controlled. I don't want to be a part of that. And if I can't go on being myself, I will choose to do something else. I want to be part of the solution. I will never compromise and become part of the problem by being another one of these people that gets brought in because they're clinging on to fame or relevance or money. If the social media environment can't have me because of the rules, I will go out, like Andrew Tate says, I'll go and flip the fucking burgers. I'll go do something else. I will not participate by complicity in lies and lies by omission and controlled opposition. It is that kind of mentality, which is why everything is so fucked up, because nobody was willing to sacrifice. Nobody said that the big picture is more important than their Twitter or than their life or their job. Not to sound dramatic, but I've suffered for a long time. People may laugh at that, and I know people make fun of that, but being in exile, being ostracized, it does suck, and it's not easy, and but somebody has to be willing to do it to make real change. You don't make real change by being employed by YouTube, which is a federal government contractor. Google's a federal contractor. If you're working for them, you're working for a federal contractor. Nobody made change by living their lives afraid of upsetting federal contractors or these kinds of other things connected to military industrial complex. So no, but I appreciate you bringing me back on. I have no problem with hard questions. I'll answer anything, but I couldn't even hear that guy. The guy comes up, he's calling me gay and a pedophile and shit like that. I can't even hear the guy. So, I can take questions even about personal things. I have to be able to hear the person. To not hear the person is a little ridiculous. So I don't want people to think I'm not willing to answer questions. It's just that whole arrangement. Bringing Destiny on, I think, was silly to begin with. But then you bring somebody on, I can't hear him. He's making accusations. That's
Isn't that free speech though? Isn't that what you're fighting for? Is to have conversations with people? You're saying that
you didn't listen to the point.
Destiny...
You didn't.
No,
I think he said. I think Brian, he did say.
I just find it ironic.
You're so blinded.
Guys,
you didn't even listen.
Brian,
to
it's like he's
no,
saying
I think,
that he couldn't hear him. It's like me saying,
guys,
Nick, can you hear me?
guys, just do me the yeah. Sorry, just guys. Yeah, so I think Brian, what he said is that he's happy to speak. He wasn't happy with Destiny. He was happy to speak to Destiny, even though he didn't agree with him. But the other person he couldn't hear. But just going. And by the way, Nick, I think the snippets. We're posting a lot of snippets. The snippets between you and Destiny were some of the best in the space. So I kind of give you credit. And you guys agree on a few things. You'd be surprised. For example, he says you should not be censored. And I think you'd agree that Destiny shouldn't be censored either. I'm assuming. But let me go. Khaleesi, I think you were speaking at a question, and we'll go to Brian and Liz.
Yeah, I just wanted, thanks, Mario, Suleiman. I just want to say, Nick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, he can't. Oh, you can. Perfect. Okay, so welcome back to Twitter, firstly. Look, I've been sat here listening to this debate, and I don't think I've ever heard you say that you expect everyone to agree 100% with all of your opinions and all of your thoughts. And as Suleiman has said, and you said that, you guys are friends, but you don't agree on quite a few things, but yet you find the areas where you do have compatibility. Do you feel, because I heard you say earlier, and I wasn't aware of this, that since the age of 18, you've been monitored and tracked and everything you say has been taken out of context and things like that. Do you feel that there's, on the one hand, this push to get you to comply to this mainstream, whatever you want to call it, liberal narrative that's over the last decade been coming in the West, where we have to conform to certain things, whether or not they meet your religious values, it doesn't matter, you have to conform to that. And then do you feel that this whole, separate to that, this whole, like Keith mentioned it, I think, as well, and you, where they comb through your past with a, like, literally with fine, like a magnifying glass to find anything that they can use against you, that only happens selectively, where you're not allowed to leave your past behind, because people's thought processes do evolve over time. A 30-year-old or a 40-year-old is not going to think the same things they thought at 18, and that is afforded to certain people, like certain politicians of ours, but people like yourself and Keith, people who are they're targeting, they're not afforded that liberty to change their thought processes over a period of time.
Yeah, well, and that's to the point that it's completely asymmetrical. I was somebody who basically stumbled into this political battle as an 18-year-old, really just asking honest questions, specifically about Israel. And I had no idea. Everyone in politics knows the influence and power of the Israel lobby. Everybody is terrified of it. I mean, look at the treatment that Candace Owens got, even by Turning Point. Daily Wire fired her, and now she's with Charlie Kirk. But even Turning Point had to put out a letter, apparently to their donors or something, saying, she's not an employee, and her views are not our views, and we hold Israel in our hearts, and blah blah blah. Like, everybody in politics knows, but can't dare say that, especially on the right, that the Israel lobby wields this immense power. And I made the mistake as a teenager of because I was obtuse, saying, hey, why do we give them all this foreign aid? And for that, I got totally ostracized. My career was over before it began. And, I don't want to say that I repudiate controversial things I've said, but when people see things that I say and, they're things that maybe are not polite or that offend people, you have to consider that you do get agitated when people are harassing you like this, when you do get banned. And by the way, it's not a coincidence that every time I go to one of these spaces on the right or the left, or I go on any stream, it's always going to be Jewish Zionists and, sometimes other people, but they're always there that are not only attacking you and calling you a racist, but then also calling you names and insulting you and interrupting you and all these things. And so I guess to your point, it's like, yeah, there's a human element where, you are expected to maintain this absolute perfection. Even Keith spoke on this. The volume of content that I put out over 7 years, 5 days a week, hours every night, and there's a collection of maybe 20 statements, 20 unfortunate statements I've said that are constantly thrown in my face. It's like, what's the expectation? 10 years, thousands of hours of content. You don't say 20 unfortunate things. You don't say 20 things that, even if they're jokes, would sound bad on paper. So for people that throw that in my face and say, well, you deserve to be censored, or, maybe that's a devil's advocate. Well, aren't you asking for it? It's like, is the expectation that a person, and in particular, a young person who's been harassed and attacked and like exiled their whole life, are they going to have 100% perfect statements that would go over well to a general audience and, no one's going to be offended? The co-host, this female, I don't know, got all offended about the witch burning joke. It's like, okay, but sometimes people don't like jokes. If you want to say it's not funny or it's inappropriate, I'll agree with you. So, but that's more to kind of bring it full circle.
That's exactly what I said. I said it wasn't funny.
Okay, and that
was it.
Fine
You're
enough.
saying that I got all in my feelings about this. I said it wasn't funny. And then I turned around and made a joke that I would volunteer as tribute for you to burn me at the stake if you were tied to me. So isn't that tit for tat?
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying. If you want to say it's that, I'm using it as an example. I'm saying you didn't like the joke. That's fine. I mean, you say it's not funny. You didn't find it funny. That's fine. But people then take things like that and they, is used on this panel. And maybe it's devil's advocate, but that's used as an example of, well, you've been censored, but you did say this. And it's like I said, if you recognize it's a joke and you don't like the joke, that's different than saying he uttered the words, he's got to be banned. So, and I want to bring it full circle.
And that wasn't my point. I have never said.
I know.
And he's not making that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying you found it inappropriate. I'm saying that's a fine reaction. That's different than using that to cancel someone, which is what other people do. So I'm not saying
let me get a couple more questions. I think, Nick, it'll be good for you to kick off your own space for your followers. I think it'll be your first space you host. Once we wrap this one up, let's do another couple of questions. Brian and Hassan.
Yeah, I just want to kind of give a closing statement via that you leave here in a couple minutes, but I think.
And actually, Brian, sorry, on that last statement, I want to start it with a question, if you don't mind. Your thoughts on this space? What were your expectations, and how do you think it turned out? And Nick's views so far. I'm not sure if you know Nick's views from before.
Yeah, so I think this space showed that free speech is not bad. It allows me to push back on Nick and Nick to spout whatever he wants to spout, right? I'd rather see that than echo chambers, which I think will further push people to the extremes. With that said, I think that I have the right, just like you have the right, Nick, to spout out your anti-Jewish sentiment and tell me that I should have no rights as a Jew. I have the right to say that you're anti-Semitic and your views are extreme and disgusting, and most people don't.
He never
agree
said
with
you won't have rights. He never said that. See, that's what I'm talking about.
He did say that.
He never said that.
Wait. He didn't say that. He told me literally 20 minutes ago that I should not have a place in Western civilization and that I should never be able to be president. That's a right.
He said he loves Jewish people. He actually said 3 times he loves Jewish people.
Guys, I think everyone. All right, guys. Do you know that Nick is on stage, so he can tell us what he said? Nick, go ahead. What did Brian said is right, or do you want to correct him?
No, and this is what always happens. Is like I say, I think only Christians should be in government and not Jews or Muslims, and he says,
right,
"You
Nick.
think no one?
You
Jews
said
should
I
have
shouldn't
no
have
rights.
a right to
but
be
you
president.
Just said I said that
right.
Jews should have no rights, but that's not what I said.
I didn't say no rights.
You
I said
did.
I shouldn't have rights.
People can listen to the
You
replay.
should.
People can listen to the replay. That's what you said.
You told me I shouldn't have the same rights that you should.
We all heard it.
You told me no.
We can correct. Even if you said it, you can correct it. Go ahead, Brian.
Nick, you said that I shouldn't have rights, the same rights that you should as a Christian. That's exactly what you said.
See this, I'm glad you're putting on a little demonstration for everybody of what I've had to deal with for 7 years. So thank you for doing a little demonstration.
So what did I say that was incorrect there, Nick?
Everyone heard it.
No, tell me.
No, because you'll invent another lie immediately.
No, you said no. I'm going to say it for him. Don't worry. You said I can't have rights as a Jew, and that is not what he said. You went ahead and misinterpreted what he said.
He said I can't have rights.
If I didn't call you out on it, you would have continued in that path, and that's the reason why Nick has been banned.
Because people like you misinterpret what he says.
People like you.
Did he not tell me I shouldn't have rights as a Jew?
People like you misinterpret what he says, and you go ahead. And I called you on it. Now you're clarifying now.
I shouldn't have rights as a Jew. The right to be president. I should have no right to be president as a Jew. That's what
you didn't say that. You said right.
I just said it.
So Brian, you're giving. So this is the ugly side of free
That's
speech,
fine.
that
That's fine.
it
That's
could get
fine.
out of
Look,
control as well. But
he
yeah,
did say
go
it,
ahead,
but
Sully.
then look, even if he didn't, he's taking it back now. He's restated what he said, and he's been
But
brought
he's
on
only
board.
restating it because I called him out, and that's what I'm trying to say. This has been going on for years with Nick, where people misinterpret what he says, and they go in a certain way until I call him out. Now he's
So you're
clarifying, oh,
turning it
righteous
on
to be a
me
president
because
as a Jew.
Nick didn't have the balls to admit that he
Oh
said I
my
shouldn't have
gosh,
certain
dude.
rights.
This
That's
is
what you're
This is
doing.
crazy.
so good.
Okay.
This is an amazing demonstration of
I don't
his
mean to
words.
interrupt, but
It
I just
is. It's
wanted
an
to show
amazing
that. I don't mean to
demonstration of your
interrupt. I'll let it go.
anti-Semitism, Nick.
Brian,
You're an
Brian, can I ask you a
anti-Semite. You said
question?
I
Brian,
shouldn't have
just a
rights.
quick,
You just can't
just
help
one
yourself.
question to Brian. Brian, just one question. One question. For me, like absolute free speech is really important, and this has been like a really good space in terms of everyone speaking their opinions. When Mario went to you just now and said, "Oh, Brian, jump in," your language to me was really interesting because you said, "Oh, I'm glad I've been able to have this discussion and push back on Nick when he spouts." So why is it he spouts and you push back? Why is it that you think that people don't think you spout and he's had to push back? See, that to me is really troubling because
People
you
do
take a
think I
position
spout.
of
People do think I
superiority
spout.
even in your language.
What are you talking about?
So then,
Told me Nick
Tate
told
even
I shouldn't have a right to be president as a Jewish man in this country. That's spouting to me. If you disagree, well, disagree. I don't give a shit.
That's Hasbara. That's just Hasbara
no, I
101.
disagree with. I may disagree with Nick's opinions, but it doesn't mean that my opinion. Like, how can you take that position of superiority where you think your positions are all right, and
He
if
told me I shouldn't have the right to be president as a
just to go
Jew.
back, I
Me
think
telling
Brian.
him he spouted is offensive to you.
Yeah, I think it just also go back. Like Tate did go to Brian and Ed on multiple occasions, called them idiots. And I think a lot of panelists would make a big deal out of it and leave the space. So I do want to say, you know, Ed and Brian do take a lot of heat, and you know they're allowed to give heat back here and there. And I think Nick, you're not offended by the word spout, but I think you know one person spouting another person's respected opinion and vice versa. So I agree with Khaleesi's point there as well. That some people think Nick is spouting right now, and I think people in the audience think Brian is spouting. And this is the beauty of having these panels. And I appreciate Nick actually coming in. And remember, my post here, I posted like first thing I said in my post, I said, I probably disagree with most of the opinions that Nick holds. A lot of politicians wouldn't even come on my space if I take certain stances like this. And Nick retweeted it. So I just want to give him credit there. And I think Brian is the same, by the way. I've had Brian and he joined spaces by people that despise him. Let me go to Hassan and Mike, if you don't mind, guys. And last couple of questions for Nick, and then we can wrap it up. And maybe Nick and Brian, you can continue the debate on another space. Hassan.
Thank you so much. I mean, I just want to add that I think the debate for the last 10 minutes has been fairly stupid. I hate to put it that way, but as an attorney, when we say that you know, Muslims and Jews should not hold office, should not be the president, should not be able to hold position in Congress, and then arguably you can add to that probably not be judges, maybe not even be lawyers. Like I'm a lawyer. I mean, as a Muslim lawyer, I've probably done more to protect the Constitution and liberty and even Christian values than most Christians in this country. So when we say they should not be able to have the right to hold political positions, we're basically saying they shouldn't have rights. That's what it becomes tantamount to, because if you don't have the ability to be involved and influence your government and influence the laws, then you very easily lose your rights. So I think, frankly, that's the effective message of Nick saying that. But that being said, we really need to protect the marketplace of ideas. So I definitely support Nick's right not to be censored, because I think we need to have free and open dialogue. Those are just my 2 cents that I wanted to add, and thank you.
I want to agree with that, because the bottom line is beyond all the drama, are we going to honor the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, or up in everything our country was founded upon, period? There's a danger inherent in stifling free speech. Jordan Peterson talks about that. Speech being equivalent to thought, being able to process thoughts externally by speaking without shame or retribution is the basis of personal growth. It's also essential for a healthy economy and society and country, and the cornerstone of innovation. Dr. Richard Florida, who wrote the book The Creative Class, refers to this concept. It's not an accident the West Coast once upon a time gave rise to some of the most innovative and successful companies in the world, long before woke. The West Coast used to be one of the freest thought capitals in the world, but now look at it. There's a direct correlation between the clampdown of freedom of thought and speech and the decline of a country's innovation and economy. That's the only thing on the ballot here. The rest is obsolete.
Nick, I want to give you the mic for the final words. I appreciate coming on the space. You're back on X now. I think, will you be doing a space after this, and maybe tell us about your strategy moving forward on X? What do you plan to do?
Yes, well, I want to say thank you for giving me the platform, and everybody for participating. You know, the Krassensteins, I don't agree with you, obviously. I know you think I'm anti-Semitic, but I appreciate you coming and debating and being good sport about it. I don't hate you guys or anybody. But as for my closing statement, I mean, in terms of the, this Muslim lawyer who says that, everybody should be able to be president, it's a conflict of visions. I don't hide. I don't make any kind of illusions about the fact that I'm a Catholic integralist. I'm Catholic. I believe that should be a Catholic monarchy, ideally. I'm not a feminist. I think that religions like Judaism and Islam are wrong. I mean, I'm not a liberal. Liberals believe in pluralism. Liberals believe, and I do think there should be a level of pluralism, but there's limits. Liberals believe that we have to kind of defer these difficult questions about what morality we should have, what religion we should practice, what people we should let into the country. I am not a liberal. And I think fundamentally that is why a lot of people disagree with me on so much, and why people have to translate my opinions for me to people that don't watch me. It's because I really, unlike many conservatives, I'm not trying to circumscribe liberalism and say, well, I believe in two genders, but yeah, I have girl power. Or, I'm against transsexuals, but gay marriage is totally fine. Or I'm against illegal immigration, but legal immigration, transforming the country, totally. Like I, unlike so many conservatives, whether you like it or not, agree with it or not, and you have a right to disagree, and you have a right not to like the jokes, but I am presenting a fundamentally different right-wing Catholic vision for the country. And I think that I've been called a lot of names because I've been deprived of a platform. I've not been able to exercise my right to speech. And I also think that people have been allowed to speak for me and twist my words. And I think that, if you don't like what I say, that's fine, but I will correct the record on people calling me a hater or some kind of odious person because I'm presenting a different opinion. So I'm glad to be back on X, out of the shadows, as they say, although I was pushed in there, into the light. And I'll just give a challenge, if I'm as terrible as they say, if all my opinions are evil, if really the jokes are, some kind of cover for hidden views, let people be the judge. People are able to discern to vote. People are able to discern as citizens. Now that I'm back on Twitter, let people discern my views. And if people like them, I'll become very popular. People like what I say. And if I don't, then I will rapidly lose popularity, fade into obscurity, and and then the good guys will win, right? So that's my challenge. I'm back on Twitter now. Let's see where we go.
Let me one more question. A message to Elon. We tried to get him on the space. He did try to join, but was a bit busy with a few things. Any final message to Elon, who reinstated you?
Well, I want to be careful because I know that he doesn't agree with me on a lot of things. And I want to say that so people can clip it.
Yeah, and I want to confirm that Elon definitely does not agree with Nick on a lot of things, which kind of shows the position that he takes. Even people he disagrees with have been unbanned. But Nick, go ahead with your message. Sorry.
Yeah. So the media can clip that. Okay, I disagree with Elon on most things. That way they can have their clip. But I think it is extremely admirable, and I think it shows integrity, and I think that he is one of the greatest patriots alive, and an immigrant himself, actually. So that, credit to immigrants, I suppose, because of Elon, that he almost single-handedly has brought free speech back to the country at a time when we need it the most. And him bringing me back shows that it's not a farce. It's not self-interested, because there's no self-interest that could be served by bringing me back, since he disagrees, and it'll be a liability because of pressure from groups like the ADL. So I think that not even me as a political person who everybody disagrees with, but I think as an American, he's truly a great American, and I think a great human being, and I'm going to do some glazing. I totally admire him and what he's been able to achieve. So and I'm appreciative of the opportunity. I hope I don't prove him wrong. I hope I don't cause problems for him, because I think that he's a pretty stand-up guy for making these moves and taking on enormous risk for everybody.
And before I wrap the space, just for the audience, do let us know your thoughts on how the space went. I was more stressed about this space, more nervous for this space than the former president of Brazil that was censored by an entire country. But I think it went a lot better than I expected. So I appreciate everyone for trying to keep it cordial. Nick, welcome back, and hopefully you'll last a bit longer than last time. I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot, everyone.